Today we're taking you inside 3 exceptional homes shaped by a love of collecting. First, we visit a layered home influenced by a childhood in Hong Kong, filled with bold patterns, global textiles, and pieces gathered through travel.
I sourced this mirror when I was traveling in Myanmar. I did a lot of shopping when I was there, and this was one of the pieces that I picked up. I just love the, again, the sort of 3-dimensional quality to it. Love the colors and the age.
Next, we go to Oklahoma City, where a lifelong collector's home overflows with pottery, miniatures, and curiosities. It's a home decorated instinctively and without restraint.
So then as we work our way around, we really get to the main wall in this room, which is one of the reasons that I bought the house, and was to accommodate this pottery collection.
And finally, in coastal Delaware, a former fashion insider brings new life to a historic home with art, antiques, and nautical finds, creating a space meant to be explored.
This little corner was my first curiosity cabinet in the house. I have a handful of them, but when I'm out shopping and collecting things, I find so many littles that I absolutely love. And I wanted a way to display them all, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's just kind of thrown in there.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
A big thank you to City Beauty for sponsoring today's Homeworthy episode. I've been adding a little extra self-care into my routine lately, and I'm excited to share City Beauty with you. They create skincare and beauty products designed to deliver real, visible results, all while enhancing your natural beauty at every age. I start with their Line Smoothing Hydra Mask. It's my go-to for days when my skin needs a boost. It's incredibly hydrating, and the serum-soaked mask leaves my skin looking refreshed and plump. Then for makeup, I've been reaching for their Beyond Mascara. It gives my lashes definition and lift without clumping, and it feels so lightweight. And of course, City Beauty is known for their City Lip bestsellers. These plumping glosses give beautiful shine and hydration, and they fit so easily into my routine and my bag. All of their formulas are science-backed, cruelty-free, paraben-free, and truly made to support your skin and confidence without a complicated routine. If you want to try City Beauty for yourself, use our code HOMEWORTHY to save 20% on your order at the link below.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Stella. Welcome to my Notting Hill home in London. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, I'm Stella Wetherall. I am an interior designer living in London, and here we are at my house in Notting Hill. So I've been living in this house for 7 years, and when I started looking to buy a house, this was a pocket of London that had always appealed to me for a really long time. I'd always walked these streets. The area that we're in is called the Hillgate Village, and it really has that lovely village vibe. And lots of cafes and restaurants, and all the houses are painted in different colours, which is a very sort of unique London characteristic. And when I was looking, this house came up for sale, and I knew pretty much before viewing it that it was the one for me. It also hadn't been touched for many years, and that was also something I was looking for, was to do a renovation rather than finding something that had already been worked on. So the main bit of work was to change the staircase, which was in bad shape and was also cut between a few different levels, going up 2 stairs, down 2 stairs, with a bulkhead in the kitchen, which meant that you had a change in ceiling level. So by straightening it all out, it kind of gave much more of a feeling of space and made for a much easier, smoother sort of journey through the house. So here we are in the entrance of my home. Here we have a hallway table in front of the stairs where there is a cutout, which I love because you can really see through to the full depth of the house, but there's also a place to put a console for keys and letters and things that are sort of useful to have to hand. And then as you walk through, this is the main living room, which is the main room in the house. I really wanted the colours and textures to pack a punch. Like many London houses, it's quite a tight space, but it works, you know, and I've really kind of filled it to its to maximum capacity. But the main focal point is the sofa in a yellow fabric from Pierre. In the centre here is a really beautiful lacquer coffee table from the Lacquer Company. I used to have a glass coffee table here, but since my son was born, I changed it up just so that there were slightly less sharp corners and it was a little bit more sturdy. Here is a really fun rattan chair from Soho Home, which actually was meant for outdoor, but I just thought it was really fun and quite a good shape, seeing as this is where you walk through from the front door. So there's a nice curve and it means you can get past with all your shopping and things like that. And here is a lovely chair, which I bought in an antique shop in Fulham and recovered in this wonderful flame stitch fabric from Tessier. And a really fun striped cushion from one of my favourite shops in the Golborne Road, Nushka Designs. And I actually added the club fender later on, but it's been such a good addition as you can have 2 extra bums on seats when hosting. So that's been a great way to kind of maximise the space. And I chose to upholster it in this Nina Campbell embroidered fabric, which is inspired by traditional Suzani. And what I love about it is the kind of oversized pattern on a small area, which I think is quite unexpected and quite fun. The cushions on this side of the room, these are from a brand called Kalinko, which makes all beautiful homewares in Myanmar. And here is a marriage cushion, which I absolutely love the embroidery of, with really fun tassels. And this was a cushion that I picked up in a sale, which is kind of full of holes, but I kind of love the colours and the pattern. And I just think it really adds a bit of fun. And it doesn't really need to be perfect. So I don't mind about the holes too much. The curtains are from amazing fabric from Susan Delis. I've always loved this fabric, and I just thought that the dark blue with the yellow was such a wonderful contrast. It's always a colour combination that I come back to time and time again, and I just think it really works. The lampshade here is actually a lampshade that I customised myself. So the card shade I sourced, and I made the holes around the top and bottom and wrapped twine, which I think just adds a really nice texture. And then you can see all across the shade, I made pinprick holes in a pattern. I love the way the light shines through at night. It really glows, and I just absolutely love that. This is an artwork, a monochrome artwork by an artist called Jack Penny, who I absolutely love the work of. I have a few of his pieces, some downstairs, which we'll see later, but I just really love the figurative works he does. And I've kind of mixed a lot of different styles and colours and sort of mediums of artwork together, which I think always is a really nice thing to have a mix of. The two works here, which the top and then the third one are by an artist called Eduardo Paolozzi, and the beaded artwork here I found in a flea market, and I just think it's really, really fun. There's an artwork here which was made during lockdown by my aunt, Sylvie Wetherall. It is called Lockdown, hence the keys, and I just think it's so beautifully framed and is such a lovely three-dimensional piece to have. The four faces along the top I picked up on a roadside when I was travelling in Myanmar and had framed with the Hessian back and painted frame. I just think it's such fun and very playful and really kind of, a bit different. So this fireplace, I put this fireplace in. The original was not in good shape and was slightly too small for the space. So decided to change that, and I sourced this mirror when I was traveling in Myanmar. I did a lot of shopping when I was there, and this was one of the pieces that I picked up. I just love the, again, the sort of three-dimensional quality to it. Love the colours and the age and this lovely sort of gilt trim. I think it's really striking and really is a lovely focal point when you enter the room. Either side of the fireplace in the recesses, I decided to fit floor-to-ceiling mirrored panels, and I decided to do this because of the room being on the smaller side. When you enter, having that reflection really explodes the room and gives a much more of a sense of space, even though it's more of an illusion than anything. But I just think it's a really nice being able to see, more depth than actually is there. This is a console I bought through Vinteria, which is an amazing platform for sourcing antiques. Here on this wicker vase, I have a flower garland, which is actually the flower garland that I wore on my wedding day. And rather than putting it in a drawer, I love to have it there so that I can see it every day. It is a vintage piece made of enamel flowers, and I absolutely love it. This little guy was sourced in Japan on my honeymoon, as was this doll. I really love everything that comes from Japan, and we had such a wonderful trip and loved sourcing. In the back behind the flowers, there's a fan, which I bought an Oxfam on Notting Hill Gate. And in the vase are some brass flowers, which I picked up in Saigon. And I just think they're really fun. I definitely got a few strange looks when I was carrying them through the airport. But I think they're just really, really fun in amongst. These are some faux peonies, which are probably not the most convincing, but I think they're really fun and great to have to see every day. So this space we use mostly for entertaining because it sits the most amount of people in the house, but it's also used every day for if I have people over, if I have someone over for coffee, we'll always sit here. And at the end of the day, my husband and I will sit here and debrief the day. So it being so close to the front door, it's really the room that gets used the most. This chair was given to me by my grandparents and is in its original upholstery. It's not necessarily something that I would have chosen myself, but I absolutely love that it was a gift from them, and I love seeing it here every day. And it sits really nicely in this corner and just adds another seat for when we're entertaining and have more people around. This is a wonderful piece by an artist from Barcelona. It is one of the first pieces I bought before buying a house. I saw it and I just absolutely love the composition. Each panel is on a piece of metal and has been painted, and then the different patina is where the metal has reacted, and it's just such a lovely piece with so much depth, and it just brings me joy. I really love the colours, and it's a great piece for this wall because it's always the first thing I see when I come in. To the right of the opening, this is a sconce that I bought from my friend Charlie Porter, who has Tat London. I absolutely love the scale of it, and how the snake sort of is asymmetric on the wall. It's really fun lighting the candle when we have friends over, and it's such a fun kind of unexpected focal point to this room. In the opening, I picked up at a flea market this old wheel that had been put on a display stand, and I just really love the age and the sort of circular shape in this lovely opening. This is a little table that I picked up in Kempton, which is a racecourse outside of London, where once a month they have a fantastic antiques market. And this was, again, actually one of the first pieces that I bought for this house. I love the wavy edge and the metal that wraps around the bamboo stand. I just think it's such a lovely side table, and this great, this red top. Lovely to put a drink on when you're sitting in this chair. Leading from the sitting room, there is our TV area. And this is a part of the house which I really, really love. And is actually, having said that we spend most of our time in the sitting room, I think I was lying. I think this is probably where we spend most of our time watching TV and relaxing after a long day. The sofa is unusually deep, and I get a lot of comments on how deep it is, but I was very sure of what I wanted for this space, and that was to have the feeling of a daybed, and this depth really kind of gives that feeling. I love daybeds that I've seen travelling in Asia, and I just think it's such a lovely concept, and I think being able to almost recline whilst watching TV is such a luxury. There are a lot of cushions. I think probably arguably too many, but I love buying cushions if I see and I like. I'll always buy, and not necessarily that because they sort of are perfect for the scheme, but if I love them, then somehow they always tend to slot in quite well. This area, I decided to wrap around all three walls with built-in bookcases. I think it's so lovely to have a space in the house for keeping books. And I think that they, especially in this area where we really want to feel like really cozy and enveloped, I think it's such a lovely way to achieve that feeling. The artwork behind the sofa is actually a throw that I bought in New York and had framed. So as with a lot of the works in this house, the framing often costs a lot more than the actual piece itself. But I think it's always worth it, and I just have absolutely loved having this as the focal point to this space in this particular area. I've flanked it with two wall lights with raffia lampshades. I think it's really nice to have lighting at this level, especially in a TV area. The lining paper of these particular shades is gilded, and that again adds to this really wonderful warm glow that we get at night in this area. So that really adds to kind of the coziness. Rather than having curtains or a fabric blind, I decided to install a chick blind, which are made in India, and I just think are such a lovely addition to any room. They are such a lovely texture. They let the light in during the day, but block it out during the evening. And I really love sort of the manual nature of kind of putting it up and down and using the rope to secure it. I just think they're so charming, and actually use them often in projects. The pendant in this area I bought in an antique shop. I love the scale of it, and just think it's such a lovely piece, particularly with these kind of rounded brass. Each space I've used a different rug. I think in the main sitting room area, where there is a lot going on, I really wanted to kind of bring in a little bit of neutral, and did that by using this wonderful jute rug from the Conran shop. In this area, I think bringing in a little bit more pattern against the green velvet sofa was, and having an antique rug was a really nice addition. It was something that I picked up in an antique shop in London. In this space, whilst there is a lot of colour and pattern, I decided to go with a neutral paint for the main walls. I just think that it's a really nice backdrop for some of the more colourful accents, and a great backdrop for the artwork. In the TV area, I brought in some colour by painting the insides of the bookcase with this rhubarb raspberry colour. It's actually the same colour that I used on the front door, so that's quite a nice continuation. And then the panel behind the sofa I painted in Hague Blue by Farrow & Ball, which I think just gives a really nice depth to the space. I always love hanging plates and baskets and things that are a bit more three-dimensional than a sort of flat artwork. These I bought again in Japan on our honeymoon, and I just think I love the simplicity of them, and I always love hanging things in threes. So the house is split over 3 floors, like many London houses, lots of going up and down stairs, and quite a narrow building. You walk in and the stairs are right in front of you. What is quite unusual about this house compared to many London houses is, although you can see the stairs when you walk in, I created a wall in front of it so that I could put a hall table, because I like somewhere to put my keys, and a sort of break point as you enter. So you walk through the door, you see the hallway table and the stairs behind, but you turn into the living room, which is a really nice way to sort of enter the house. And then beyond that is the TV area. Quite often in these London houses you have a sort of L shape, which is what we have here. A lot of people use that area as a study, but I really wanted to kind of create a cosy nook for watching TV. Through on the same floor is my son's bedroom at the back of the house. Unusually, the kitchen is located on the lower ground floor, along with what was another bedroom and bathroom, but is now a bathroom and a playroom. And the top floor, there is a terrace and the master bedroom and bathroom. I would say that my personal aesthetic really focuses on colour and texture and an influence from the East. I grew up in Hong Kong. I lived there for the first 15 years of my life and have a really sort of strong connection with that part of the world, having travelled around. I love the vibrant colours, yellows and blues that you see all across that part of the world. I also love travelling to India. I love embroidery. As you can see what I'm wearing today, I sort of carry my personal style through sort of my home, my clothing, and that's my personal aesthetic would really be kind of more is more. So now we're going to continue on this floor, and I'm going to take you to my son's room. So here we are in my son's nursery. This used to be my office before having a baby, and the one thing that remains from the original scheme is the blind. So that I wanted to keep and so was the kind of starting point for everything else. This room is at the back of the house and it doesn't get a huge amount of natural light. So I knew I wanted to choose a paint colour that felt warm, and I decided to go with Farrow & Ball Setting Plaster, which is a colour that I have used time and time again and absolutely love, and I think works really nicely in this space. So what I did was I contrasted it by painting the skirting and all of the woodwork in powder blue by Farrow & Ball. And I just think that it's a really fun combination, and that slightly pastel palette, which lends itself really nicely to a baby's room. Along the underside of the cornice, I really wanted to add a hand-painted element, and when I was 8 months pregnant, decided to make a stencil, and I painted the sort of tent motif all the way around the room, which I think is a cute addition. Also on the architrave, I painted some round circles in the same paint as the ceiling, which is pale powder, again by Farrow & Ball, just as a fun additional element. It kind of reminds me of the sort of Bloomsbury style hand painting, so I thought it was a really nice addition for this room. I really wanted to have a single bed in here, so kept it quite simple with a cream balance, but I already had this red antique quilt that I got in France that sits at the end of the bed. I think it goes really nicely with the setting plaster on the walls, the red and pink combination, and also the chest of drawers, which I got from Julian Chichester, which is in a high gloss finish in a really vibrant red. It has a wavy front, which I think is really playful, and I use it as my changing table and storage, which is potentially a bit extravagant for a baby's room, but it just makes me so happy and is really functional as well. So it was a great addition. The crib I found online, and it was delivered from a brand in France. I just really love the sort of rattan detail, and just makes it a little bit more interesting than just a standard painted crib. The artwork in this room, they were all pieces that I had before, but rehung for the space when I redid it. The large artwork on the left is a painting by my sister, Honor Wetherall. She does these wonderful pieces which are inspired by architectural kind of shapes, and she paints in watercolour in different colours across the piece. I just think it's such a fun composition and works really well in this room. This plate I bought through a seller on Instagram with my son's name and date of birth. I love hanging plates, and I just think it's such a lovely memento for him, and really is lovely to hang above the crib. So this is a vintage piece that I picked up in a flea market. Really love the detail, and it's so great to hang above the changing table, so I have everything to hand. On the top is a really lovely old set of the full works of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter, which was given to him by my dad, and it's just such a special thing to have. This is a Beanie Baby that was given to him by my sister. He was born in the year of the dragon, and so that is a vintage dragon Beanie Baby. On this side of the room are some vintage maps of Hong Kong, which I had framed and I think worked really nicely with the colour scheme, and it really is a really nice nod to my childhood. For the headboard, I've always loved this sort of Indian-inspired shape, and this was a piece of fabric that I had in a drawer. I've always loved the colours, and I thought they worked really nicely with the scheme in here, with the lovely kind of light blues, yellows, oranges. I thought it sat really well with everything, and I did a trim piping with some raw silk from the cloth shop, which I think is a really nice frame. This is a bamboo side table, which is vintage. I have always loved these kinds of tables. My grandparents had lots of tables like this in their home, so they're very nostalgic for me, and I just think they are such a lovely way of bringing in a texture and a slightly more unexpected shape and some age to a room. So this works really nicely as a side table. The chair with my son's name on was a gift and is just such a charming, lovely addition to this room. This was a piece that I bought from Pottery Prints. I saw it online, just scrolling through Instagram, and it was whilst I was doing the work on this room, and it immediately jumped out at me, and I think just works so perfectly there. The plate above it was a wedding present, and again, it's just a really charming and works really well with the scheme in here. So this room was originally my office, and when I was trying to work out how to repurpose the room to be my son's nursery, but also having enough storage to still keep my work materials to hand, I had the idea of using some IKEA shelves in this part of the room, building an end panel to make it look a little bit more fitted, and then having this curtain built fitted in front of it. It's made in a wonderful embroidered fabric from the cloth shop, one of my absolute favourites, and I've used in so many projects. I just absolutely love the colours and the sort of delicate pattern, and sort of behind here I've concealed my work life. It's just great to have things to hand. I didn't want to put things into storage, but it is neatly kind of tucked away behind the door, and it doesn't luckily get in the way too much. How I ended up in the world of interior design is, I think in roughly my mid-20s, I decided to change direction, and interiors had always been something that I'd loved and enjoyed, but hadn't really ever considered as a profession. But thankfully I sort of joined the dots and decided to take a year studying at the Inchfield School of Design, which is based in Chelsea here in London. I had a brilliant year, learnt so much, and from there got a job working with British designer Flora Soames, who I worked with for 2 years and learnt a great deal. I was working with her on various projects and also was with her when she launched her incredible fabric and wallpaper collection. I then worked for Kit Kemp at Firmdale Hotels. There are 8 hotels here in London, including the Ham Yard, and 3 in New York. And I very sadly started there just before COVID hit. So it was short-lived, but I learnt a lot. And from there, being made redundant during that time, I was pushed into kind of doing interior design independently, and I'm so glad that I did, because I might not have sort of had the confidence to take that leap quite so soon, but that is now what I've been doing for the last 4 to 5 years. I think when it comes to mixing patterns and textures, I think it always helps to start with perhaps 2 to 3 key elements, just so that you have the base for a room. For example, here, I always knew I wanted to have a yellow sofa, so that was kind of the starting point for the scheme. I then brought in the blue pattern curtains, which I've always loved the combination of blue and yellow. And then from there, I really feel like things that I were drawn to and that I liked, that I then brought in. I didn't worry too much about exact matches or things like that. Once you kind of have the ground for the room, I think bringing things in that maybe are a little bit unexpected or don't quite match in the way that you would imagine, I think brings interest and makes for a much more interesting scheme. And now I'm going to take you downstairs to the kitchen. So here we are in the kitchen. The layout of the space hasn't changed a huge amount in terms of the people living here previously always had a table in the center. But they had this more as a formal dining room. And then through here to where the laundry room is now behind, there was an opening and there was a very small kitchen in a U-shaped in that area. So the kitchen really wasn't the focal point. So really, when I was redesigning it, I wanted to bring the kitchen very much back into this space so that it was a kitchen dining room rather than a formal dining room, and closed this off, gave an opportunity to have the full height so that I could have the larder cupboard and the fridge. And then on this run, I really wanted to keep everything at countertop level and have as much open space above as possible. I really feel like if you can avoid having wall cabinets, it really can make the space feel a lot more open and can make it also feel less utilitarian and less like a kitchen, which I really love. So in the center, we've got an open shelf, and then to the left of the sink, I sourced a stainless steel plate rack, which I really love the kind of different materials and the kind of openness of it, and how the stainless steel sort of ties in with the cooker and the extractor fan. So there's a nice sort of balance in materials. The kitchen is made by Devol, a UK-based kitchen company. They have showrooms in London, but all the joinery is made in Leicestershire. The colour is a bespoke colour that I mixed with them, and is this sort of quite soft grey-green colour. I really like the depth that it brings to the space, and it really works well with the brass ironmongery and antique brass tap. Also, another reason for not having wall cabinets is so that I can hang more artwork and hang plates, which I think, again, just makes the space feel much more like a living space and less like a utilitarian kitchen. Above the shelf, I have some maps of Hong Kong, which I sourced through Maltby Maps, and are really charming and are really kind of my two favourite maps of Hong Kong. I have quite a few. The Cape Moss Star is by an artist called Angelica Hicks, who's based in New York. The mussels I love the monochrome in amongst the brighter colours, and the kind of food subject in a kitchen. The below it is a vintage Kellogg's poster, which I think also is really fun and charming. The collage artwork is by an artist called Hugh Griffiths. I really love the sort of the textural quality of it, the collage. He frames everything himself, so you buy the artwork framed as he wants it. So I love the kind of the age that the frame has. Below it is a study by the artist Jack Penny, who I absolutely love the work of, and it's, as you can see, it's sort of taken from his sketchbook. I gave it to my husband for Christmas, and it's just a really fun little scene of people enjoying themselves at a dinner table, so it felt fitting for this space. Above the sink is an artwork, again by my aunt Sylvie Wetherall. It is chairs stacked in a warehouse that she visited and loved, and then she took the kind of the shapes. I love the kind of sculptural quality to it. And then again above that is another work by Jack Penny. He does some wonderful works in colour, but the three works by him that I have are all monochrome. And there's just something so lovely about them. I love the lobster. Again, you can see the sort of hole punch on either side. This is from one of his sketchbooks. And I just think it really has such a lot of charm to it. Above the table, I've hung two pendants. The ceiling height in here isn't the highest, so I went with something that was transparent so that it didn't feel like it blocked your view too much coming into the room. These are from Pookie, a really wonderful lighting company, and I think work really well above the table. The dining table is a sort of folding refectory table that I saw the design for and then had made using the oak from my parents' garden in Scotland. So that's a really nice thing to have in London, a sort of connection to where they live in Scotland, which is great. And then the dining chairs I bought at the Decorative Fair in Battersea, which is on 3 times a year, and is just the most fantastic place to go if you want to source antiques, because all of the best antique dealers from across the country gather and have sort of the best array of antiques. The outside sort of courtyard garden is not very big, but is such a lovely extension of the kitchen. It's so nice to be able to open the doors and have greenery. This is north facing, so it doesn't get the most enormous amount of direct natural sunlight. So I actually worked with the most wonderful garden designer, Butter Wakefield, who does mostly much bigger and grander and more incredible things than this little garden, but she was just such an amazing help, and it was her idea to have these 4 ferns, which have really thrived in this space because they love damp and not too much sunlight. So it kind of creates this jungle atmosphere, which I just absolutely love. And then the greenery behind is jasmine. So in sort of May time, it flowers and is absolutely beautiful. The butter helped source the table and chairs from an antique shop in Notting Hill called Myriad, and I just think with the black crystal doors, it just works so well to the link between the two. And also the trellis behind has some mirrored panels, which, because it's not the most enormous garden, courtyard garden, at night especially, it gives that illusion of depth, which is so nice. On this side of the room, just to continue the kind of unfitted kitchen look, I sourced this wonderful bobbin console from Alfred Newell, and it just works so nicely having things on display. On the top, I mean, it looks slightly chaotic, but lovely to have all the candlesticks and some photo frames and vases that I love, and just sort of trinkets and fun things that I like to see every day. This is a really fun faux geranium that is made from paper, and I just really love this sort of artwork in itself. The piece behind is a world map with all the different currencies of across the world. What I also love about this map that is a bit unusual is that Asia is in the center, and Hong Kong sort of is round about here. So it's kind of nice having that as a focal point with kind of Britain over here on the left-hand corner. I just think it's a really lovely piece, and I love the kind of the different colours of the different banknotes. Either side, I've hung these banana leaf sconces, which I just think are really fun and are so nice when they're lit in the evening. Either side, again, I've hung yellow plates that I found in a flea market in France, and then a blue bowl in the centre, which I bought in Tokyo in Japan. It's always really fun to hang plates. I think it's such a nice way of adding texture to a room. Again, the blue and yellow combination is a favourite, and I just think it's such a sort of harmonious, happy composition, the kind of plates surrounding the bowl. Here is a mid-century chair, which I sourced from Vinteria in a blue velvet, and this is just a great little corner for sitting and chatting to whoever's cooking. A little bobbin stool, which I think originally these stools were for using in farms, like when you were milking cows, and they were that's what these originally were for, but I just think there's something so charming about them, and I love the bobbin that then ties in with the Alfred Newall console. This trio of works that are framed in perspex are woven African textiles. I don't know the exact origin of them, but I just love the colours and the different shapes and the circles that sort of make up each one in a slightly different way, and they work so nicely behind this chair. So when I did the renovation of the house, the main bit of work was to reconfigure the stairs. And the way the stairs were before really impacted the ceiling height in this area. So by reconfiguring, I was able to gain this ceiling height that then is the right way through the kitchen from this area. It just creates such a lovely sense of space. Before, because it was so much lower, it felt like almost a tunnel going through into the kitchen dining area. So I really feel like by achieving what we achieved, it's really made a great deal of difference to this area. This is a bar that is under the stairs. As you can see, the shape of the stairs here. And originally I had designed this to be full height storage. So it was going to be far more kind of practical in terms of, housing, vacuum cleaner and things like that. But when I realised that I had somewhere else to put that, I thought that this was such a fun opportunity to create something a bit more unexpected and a bit more fun, which is a home bar. Again, Alfred Newall made this for me, bespoke, and I made the worktop the same oak as the console that he made, and then the cupboards below are painted in Farrow and Bull Radicchio in a full gloss with these lovely cane panels in the doors. I think it makes for such a lovely entrance to the kitchen. If you're coming down the stairs and friends are coming for dinner, you can offer a drink, and it's just a lovely way to kind of display drinks and kind of give that sense of fun and that really welcoming feeling when people come over. This is a beautiful plate made by an artist called Florence St. George, and I just absolutely love the kind of uneven edge and the jetem. I just think it's such a lovely, charming piece. In the bar, I also have a lovely wavy tray and an ice bucket by the Lacquer Company, the same as the coffee table upstairs. They make the most beautiful pieces, and they really lend themselves so well to these kinds of spaces with the colours that they make in the lovely deep reds and fun kind of brighter colours. I fitted a mirror to the back and to the side of this space, again, which really helps to add a sense of space. Especially with walking through a narrow passage like this, your eye is drawn to the back of the bar and it immediately explodes the room, which I always just think is such a nice trick for these houses which are quite narrow. So in here is the laundry room, which is directly off the kitchen, and I always wanted to incorporate a laundry room just because where I lived before, the washer and dryer was in the kitchen, and I always found like I had laundry that was drying when people would come over, or it was always seemed to be in the way. So this was a really important room for me to create, and it's small, but it really works, and I can sort of close the door on it when people come over, which is so nice. But equally, because it is directly in my line of sight when I walk through to the kitchen, I thought it was a really nice opportunity to wallpaper in something that was eye-catching and that was slightly more unexpected for this kind of space. So I chose this really fun Pierre Frey wallpaper, which I absolutely love. It's got floral design, but with the zigzag in blue, which I think just makes it a little bit more contemporary. I just think it's such a lovely... I think it's just such a lovely wallpaper. And I painted the cabinets in a blue that matched with that blue zigzag, and I also fitted as the splashback sort of cream Zelige tiles, which are Moroccan, which works really well. The cabinetry, I bought the carcasses from Howdens and then had a joiner make the doors in this tongue and groove panelling, which is just quite simple, but I think works really well. I always hang my laundry on these wooden articulated laundry hangers, which I got from Zara Home. And these I've hung behind, which are lovely old photographs of Hong Kong, which I think are really nice to look through when passing. On this wall, I bought some vintage works which show fashion design from the 1950s and framed them in a blue frame, just to, again, kind of tie in with the wallpaper. This is the primary bedroom and is on the top floor of the house, and it spreads across the whole of the top floor, so there's a dressing area and a small bathroom. In this room, the walls are painted again in my favourite Farrow & Ball setting plaster, which I just think is such a lovely, calm colour for a bedroom. And I also love how it can work in a nursery setting, but also because it isn't too pink, it can feel quite grown up and sophisticated as well. On the headboard, I've used a silk fabric from Robert Keim, which I absolutely love, and is based on a Suzani. I really love the colours, I love the pink. The bedspread is embroidered and I bought from Birdie Fortescue a few years ago. The cushions are quite unexpected and sort of quite bold in colour, but I really like how they kind of throw off the scheme and make it not too kind of coordinated and pretty. And I also just love the texture of velvet. And then this block kind of raspberry coloured velvet in the middle, which works quite nicely with the headboard and the raspberry pink bed valance as well. The bedside lamps are from Sewn, which I got in a sale a few years ago, and the lampshades are made by Nushka with this lovely trim top and bottom. They give such a lovely glow at night and are just a really lovely soft texture in a bedroom. Again, on both bedside tables, I have these little trays from the Lacquer Company, which I just absolutely love, and it's so nice to put your bits before going to bed. And the bedside tables are antique. I got from Lawford's. I really love the shape of them, and they have a drawer at the bottom, which is really handy, but I do also love how they're open, and I kind of stack magazines and books and things that I just want to hand when going to bed. This originally was the doorway into the bedroom from the staircase, but I reconfigured so that you walk through the dressing area and then into the bedroom, which I think is a really nice flow and also creates a little bit more privacy coming from the staircase. So instead, I kept the opening and created extra storage in this area. So I always really like having a shallow bookcase in a bedroom. Again, just really nice to have books and photographs and little bowls where I keep jewellery and things like that, and photographs of my parents, my grandparents, and just all the things that I really love. This is an artwork which is a map of where Sewn make all of their incredible lighting and furniture. I bought it many years ago and just really love the kind of different furniture designs that are sketched. Above it is a Japanese work that I bought from the decorative fair and framed in oak, which I just think has a really nice soft pink background and works really nicely with the wall colour. This artwork is by an artist called Rose Harris, who I absolutely love the work of. This work is by an artist called Katie Stubbs. My husband loves chicken, and we kind of have a joke about that. So I saw this and just thought it was such a brilliant fun work, which is a sort of chicken shop, and it's got sort of God on the phone asking not to forget the coleslaw, and sort of rats on the floor. It's by a wonderful artist called Katie Stubbs, and she always has really fantastic stories and kind of tongue-in-cheek, fun subjects to all of her artwork. On the left-hand side are some plates by an artist called Makoto Kagoshima, a Japanese artist. They were a wedding present from my husband's aunt and uncle, and we just absolutely love them. We love the sort of folk element, and the colours are just so lovely. Below it is an artwork that my aunt gave us of us on our wedding day, with all of the kind of bridesmaids and page boys who, it was a Christmas wedding, and I just think this really kind of captures the day, which is so nice. So the artworks above the bed, the ones far left and far right, are a pair of lovely drawings in watercolour by Oliver Messel, and they were for costume design. And I just think they're so delicate and lovely, and I saw them at a art fair and just fell in love with them. The artwork in the middle, I have other pieces by this artist, Hugh Griffiths. He works with collage and mixed media, and I just really love the composition with, you know, the number 3 in the corner and the sort of shooting star and the lovely gilt frame. And then in between are some pressed botanicals, which I've had for a long time, and I really love how they are framed in perspex, which kind of gives a slightly more contemporary edge to them. So in this corner, I have a lovely, again, a collage work by a Japanese artist called Fumi Imamura, which I got through the Lindsay Ingram Gallery, and I just absolutely love her work. It's so beautiful and intricate, and I love the kind of little butterflies that she's sort of dotted around the flowers. So the curtains in this room are made from a fabric that I bought from the cloth shop in Portobello Road, and it's a very sort of humble fabric, but I just really love the horizontal texture and the green and cream kind of combination. I love how it's not sort of completely uniform, and I love the way it drapes, and just how the green, soft green, works so nicely with the setting plaster colour on the walls. Also, what I've used are these lovely bamboo roller blinds, which I use often in projects. I just think they add another layer to a window dressing, and I love how the light comes through during the day, and they look much more solid when it's dark outside, and I just absolutely love how they work alongside curtains and bring in that kind of texture and dappled light. In between the two windows, I have another botanical framed, like the ones above the bed, a wicker basket from a company called Kalinko, again made in Asia, which I absolutely love, a mirror that I sourced from an antique shop in Notting Hill, and then a photograph of my aunts at my parents' wedding. Here is an armchair that I picked up in a flea market. As you can see, it hasn't been upholstered. I had planned to upholster it, but 7 years later, I still have left it as is. And I actually really like the raw kind of Hessian, and being able to see the studs and the stitches. And I think eventually I will cover it, but it's worked really nicely in this space as is for now. And, you know, I've got a few cushions here, lovely Keelim small cushion, and then a cushion with S on it, which I picked up in Lily Road in Fulham, which is made from an antique French textile. Again, love having a standing lamp next to a chair right at the height at which, you know, if you're reading something, you have a really nice ambient light. Opposite the bed, I have a quite rickety but lovely bamboo chest of drawers. This part of the wall is above the chimney downstairs, so I couldn't get full depth cupboards all the way along the back wall because I didn't have the depth, but I actually really like having the break. But you know, sometimes a whole wall of built-ins can be a bit oppressive and can look a little bit boring. So I've got the built-ins in the recesses left and right, and then the chest of drawers in the middle, which gives an opportunity to put things on top and have a nice lamp. This is a sort of Kashmiri Indian lamp and a lampshade made with this lovely sewn fabric, which I love. The artwork behind is again by the artist Hugh Griffiths, who does these lovely collage with fabric, and I love the white frame. And then above it is a scene from the Tuileries Gardens in Paris, and I just love the bicycle and the sort of school children walking through the park with the trees. I just think it's such a lovely scene and a lovely thing to look at when in bed. The rug is a vintage Moroccan Berber rug. I absolutely love the pattern of this one. I think quite often also Berber rugs can have quite a harsh black contrast with the cream, but the reason I love this one so much is because it has this lovely kind of light brown, which is much softer in a bedroom and is just lovely and soft underfoot. Below the rug for the fitted carpet, I've done a sort of boucle sisal, which I think works really nicely with the overall scheme. So the house originally had a larger bathroom off of the primary, but there was limited storage for clothes, and it also wasn't an ensuite. So I decided to reduce the size of the bathroom and to create this area in between the bedroom and bathroom, which has some built-in closets. Where I didn't have a huge amount of depth, I created a built-in shelving, which I then made around wicker baskets, which I keep all of my different kind of items of clothing in, and it's just a really great way to organise and a great use of space because I've got somewhere to put everything. Okay, so this is the primary bathroom, and whilst it is really very small, there's a place for everything and it actually works really well. So I'm very happy with having reduced the size of it. There's this lovely big window which looks out to the back of the house, and that gives an amazing amount of light and a lovely view. So I decided to split the room with this panelling, so a sort of tongue and groove panelling with the bead on top. I kept the colour below nice and neutral, but painted the top with this quite dark blue, which when I did it, I think the builders and anyone else that came to see what I was doing was a bit confused by, because it seemed like quite a strong contrast, but I felt like once everything was hung, the artworks and kind of all of the other elements came together, I think it's actually a really fun contrast and works quite nicely. It's really cosy at night and a lovely place to kind of have a bath. Although not groundbreaking, a sort of blue and white and sort of almost nautical theme is going on here. I found this piece of The Growth of a Shell in an antique fair, and although I didn't have measurements, I really hoped that it would fit, and when I got home and it fit perfectly, I was so thrilled because I just think it's such a lovely piece against the blue. These are some starfish which are in box frames, which I just think it's so nice having that 3D element. And I really like this plate with Venus down here with the shells around it. I think it's just such a fun work, and although quite unusual to hang so low, I just really like how the different heights work all together. This is a blue and white shell, which is in quite a traditional sort of floral design. I think I hadn't really seen anything like it, and I just thought it was such a fun addition with the sort of blue and white colour, and it works really well sort of with the smiley face and the flower either side. The mirror is a Swedish kind of trellis mirror, and I'd seen these kind of used above fireplaces often, and always really liked them, but I'd never really seen one used in a bathroom. And when I was looking, I knew that because of the bathroom being so small, I really wanted it to be as big as possible to maximise reflection and bouncing of light from the window. And I was so happy when it went up because I think it works really nicely in this room. I also really like how it sits with the panelling going, the panelling cuts across it in the middle. So I like how not everything's matched up. I think it creates a little bit more interest, a slightly more unexpected combination of things. The lighting in here, both the wall light above the mirror and also the pendant are from Pookie, which I think they just make really fun and lovely light fittings. The blind in here is sheer. This is a really lovely fabric by Catherine Ireland, which I bought through Tissu de Laine, and it's just a very simple Roman blind, unlined. I think my husband gets quite cross that it doesn't block out more at night, but I think the trade-off with it being so nice and light and being able to have it closed but with all the light coming through during the day is great. And here I've got one of these lovely bamboo wicker side tables, which is I put bath salts and things that I need from the bath. Again, making it less utilitarian and a little bit more like a living room, so that not everything in a bathroom has to be super kind of practical. It does get a bit wet and it probably won't last forever as a result, but for now I absolutely love it. I just think it's so nice having an antique piece in a bathroom. This is another stool that I bought more recently, which is really useful because I can pull it up to sit when I'm bathing my son. On the other side of the room, there is the bath, and it's a freestanding bath, which is quite traditional, but I've painted it in the same blue as the walls above as quite a nice way to sort of tie the two together. On the floor, I've used cement tiles from Popham, which are all made in Morocco, and I selected the sort of green and yellow combination, which I think is quite a fun addition to the space. To the right of the window, there's a large towel rail with a round mirror sitting kind of within it, and there's also a shower that is above the bath, so when I'm standing in the bath there is the mirror there, which is quite fun. The artwork above the bath is by a photographer called Slim Aarons, and it is of a scene by a pool looking out over the ocean, and it's just such a lovely piece to have when sitting in the bath, and on a rainy day in London, nice to be able to dream of being somewhere a bit hotter. For me, really what makes a house a home are all the individual elements that tell the story of the person who lives there. And that's something that I always really emphasise with clients, that is really such an important part of any home that I work on, is really kind of making sure that their story is told and that the things that they love are celebrated. I think it's so often with artwork, with objects, with things collected on like when you're traveling. So those are the things I really feel like make a house a home.
Hey Homeworthy, I'm Daniel. Welcome to my home in Oklahoma City. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Daniel Barrett Mathis. I am a lawyer by day and a collector and a maximalist by night, and also by day. I'm sometimes known by my handle on Instagram called Not a Minimalist, and welcome to my home in Oklahoma City. So I've been collecting my entire life. It's probably the first thing that I felt naturally inclined to do. I had, in the second or third grade, I started collecting erasers and key rings and rocks, and that was just sort of something I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed curating and putting together all of these various things, and then that sort of just carried throughout my entire life. I grew up in Mississippi, and born and raised, went to undergraduate there and to law school there, and then ultimately ended up practicing law in Texas. And in Texas, where oil and gas is a big industry, I ended up doing a lot of work for a large oil and gas company that's based in Oklahoma City, and I moved here to work for them 13 years ago. When I first moved to Oklahoma City, I was living in an apartment in downtown Oklahoma City. It was a block from work, and I really loved that apartment for a couple of reasons. It was kind of small, but I had 20-foot ceilings, and so after a few years of settling into that, I started really having fun with building these huge gallery walls on these giant walls that went, 20 or 22 feet into the air. And that was kind of the way I was expressing, I guess, my maximalism and my, inclination to collect things, collecting art. And then I started rekindling, my interest in pottery. I had been buying, there's a collection that you can probably see behind me of white pottery, and I started collecting that about 25 years ago, but I just put it in storage. And so it was many years later, and really in this house is the first time that I ever have had it displayed. So then I started sharing photos on Instagram, and Not a Minimalist was born. So when you first come into my house is a small little entryway, and you definitely get a dose right away of what's to come, because there's no shortage of color or texture in this small space. I often say that my entryway is a little bit Gucci and a little bit garage sale, because I do have this sort of high-end wallpaper that was manufactured by Gucci, and it appealed to me because I'm a fan of orange, and so it had orange. That's kind of one of my signature colors. And I also like the graphic nature of the G's that are repeated in the geometric pattern. I like fonts and script and words, and so it appealed to me for that reason. But I also thought that, a small space like this was a good place to do something fun like that, and something that's a little more expensive. Everything else in here is secondhand. I bought, on this wall we have kind of this vignette with the centerpiece being this beadboard cabinet. I bought that at an auction in Mississippi in the late 90s, and I paid $90 for it. And it's been one of my favorite pieces ever since. It's kind of got this good greenish blue color, and it's also got storage, and it's a really good size, and it will fit a lot of different places, including nestling into this entryway where you don't really want something to be in the way, but it's a handy spot for collecting things. I've also just got a collection of canes and yardsticks and even an umbrella in there. This chandelier I bought at an antique mall in Mississippi on one of my trips home. And then the two sconces are, again, Jonathan Adler pieces. I like the whimsy of the hand holding the light, and it also is kind of echoing the brass and black combination that I have throughout the house. So I guess the most fun thing is when somebody walks in, almost everybody says, "Oh wow," and I think that is a big compliment, and it's a bit of a surprise. And I like that. So I want them to feel something and see something that maybe they've never seen before, and I think that's fun. And so, I think that you kind of get that feel in the entryway, and it's foreshadowing of what's to come in the other spaces. So when you first come into the house, to the left is my living room. It's quite a big space, as you can see. This was one of the spaces that appealed to me about the house. Originally, this was a duplex, and the prior owner, about 20 years ago or 25 years ago, renovated it into a single space. And so this room would have originally been 2 living rooms. There would have been one on the far end facing that side of the duplex, and then one on this side facing this way. And there were 2 fireplaces in the middle. Those were taken out. The new fireplace at the end was constructed. The ceiling was vaulted. and it made for a really large living space that really lends itself to being divided into two different areas the way I have it here. So on this wall in the living room, I knew that I wanted to install my collection of tramp art mirrors and to display some of my other tramp art pieces. And if you don't know what tramp art is, it's a type of folk art, and it was started, I think it started in like the late 1800s and into the 1930s and 1940s, both in the United States and in Europe. But it generally describes this technique of taking cast off thin pieces of wood and layering them in a graduated way and then chipping the corners. So sometimes it's even called chip art because of the technique that they use to cut the pieces of wood. It's often in frames or picture frames, and also in boxes, little keepsake type boxes that they would make. And it was often by untrained artists, which I think is where the term tramp originated. I think that's a relatively 20th century term. I love the intricate detail involved in it. I love the fact that it was pieces of layered wood and that it was really worthless cast-off supplies that they used to make these really beautiful pieces. And so what I like to do for the frames, I like to have mirror installed in all of them so that it kind of brings them all together as opposed to having all different kinds of pictures in them. And so I knew that I had this tall wall here that could accommodate those, and so that's where I have the mirrors displayed. And then in the corner, I have some of my other pieces of tramp art, which includes candle holders and a lamp, and as I mentioned, some of the keepsake boxes that I have in the shelving over here. And it's something that I really loved for a long time, but I didn't collect it initially because it can be quite expensive. And then eventually I found a really large mirror in Kansas for a really good deal, and then that broke the seal. Then I'm in. I've got my first piece, and my collection of tramp art began. This is a really large space, and it really lended itself to having two discrete sort of seating areas, and I really wanted that too. And so I've divided it by using furniture, and it's really both sides are just an eclectic mix of different kinds of seats. I like Killam, as you can tell from my rugs, and so I have a couple of newer pieces of furniture that are upholstered in Killam. Most of these were made by the Sundance Company, and you may be familiar with their catalog. I think they have since stopped making this kind of furniture, but those pieces are a favorite. I've got a couple of modern chairs mixed in. There's the cardboard chair, I think it's called the wiggle chair, and that's a newer piece that I bought. And then the little bench here is a Goodwill find that I had upholstered in African fabric. I like the graphic nature of these fabrics, and to me they kind of all work together, sort of exemplifies my eclectic taste. So on this side of the room, it's a little more comfortable, I would say. I've got a couch that was from an antique mall that is super comfortable. It's in the upholstery that it came in. At some point, I might decide to reupholster it, but so far, I've been happy with it. I've got on the coffee table a collection of just random things that I like to look at, so it's not as practical for putting your feet up, but it's enjoyable to look at. And then probably one of my most famous collections is in the black shelving to the left of the fireplace, which is my collection of Ozark roadside tourist pottery. Sometimes it's just called Ozark tourist pottery or Ozark roadside pottery, but it is one of my favorite collections, and I discovered it in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I bought a piece not knowing what it was, and later did some research and realized that it's a pottery that originated in Hollister, Missouri. The guy's name was Harold Horine, and it was in the 1920s, 1930s. He began making this pottery. The mixture of clay that he used was something that he formulated, and then the painting technique was something that he developed, and he patented both of those things. It can be found, all around, because it was also a tourist purchase. It was sold at roadside stands along common tourist highways and pathways. And so people would buy them and take them home. But it's pretty hard to find because it wasn't particularly mass produced, not in the way that my white pottery collection was. So there's just not a whole lot of it. And so that makes it a little bit more fun to collect because it's typically a slower build collection. So here to the right of the fireplace in the living room is the transition in the hallway down to the pot den. And I had some art on this wall, but I was just never satisfied with how it looked because it was it competed with the art that was on the other walls in the living room. But I wanted something to transition into the hallway, and I guess I could have left the wall blank, but that's not what I do. So ultimately, I decided that I had this collection of vintage flags, and that it would be maybe if I hung them vertically and just let them hang, that the softness of that would be a nice counterbalance to the stone on the fireplace and just the shapes of the art on the wall. And so I've been really satisfied with that. So on this wall in the living room is really just an assortment of Southwestern inspired items and art. It's hard to live in Oklahoma and Texas and to not be influenced by the Southwest. And I particularly like to go to New Mexico and to Santa Fe. And so I started collecting paintings of the desert. And so they are mostly contained on this wall, and including a collection of what were tourist items that I have in this cabinet. And if you may notice that this cabinet is also tramp art. It is definitely the nicest, most special piece of tramp art that I have. It is very hard and unusual to find furniture that was made in that technique, but this is a piece that I spotted in an antique mall in Dallas really not that long ago, and I had shared it in my stories on Instagram, and I didn't buy it, and I got so many DMs about how could you possibly have not bought that cabinet that I immediately deleted the story and messaged the antique mall on a Saturday night that, I'm gonna call you tomorrow when you open on Sunday and possibly drive back down to Dallas from Oklahoma City to get the cabinet. So I did, and I'm really happy that I did. It is definitely a favorite piece that I have in the whole house. It's very special. So one thing that people ask me a lot is how to, display multiple collections in a way that doesn't feel just like plain clutter. And I really never intentionally didn't do that, but a lot of people will come over and say that it doesn't feel busy, it doesn't feel cluttered in here, and I've had, in examining kind of what I do, it is a couple things. One, probably the most important thing that to me is to keep your collections together. And so throughout my house, if I have multiple collections, they're typically displayed all together. We saw behind, to the front of me, the Ozark pottery that's all contained in one spot. I don't even have a single piece of Ozark pottery displayed anywhere else. And if I did that, it would kind of bother me visually because I've tried that and it just felt out of whack, and so I end up isolating and aggregating it all back together. And so that tends to be my first rule of thumb. And then the other thing is just to keep your collections varied in size and color and texture. I have another swirl pottery collection. I wouldn't put it in the same room with the Ozark pottery because they're too similar and they're going to sort of compete. Similarly, in the back room where the white pottery is displayed, I have other collections in there, but it took me a little bit of experimenting to kind of figure out what will work in there without competing with each other. And so I try to find things that complement each other but not compete. I've been a renter pretty much my whole life. I moved around a little bit with work and then went back, I worked for a while and went back to college for law school. And so if there's anything that will make you a minimalist, it's moving frequently. And so I dabbled in minimalism. And then as I said, I kind of got back into maximalism eventually when I was settled into an apartment here in Oklahoma City. Well, when the pandemic hit, everybody was pretty well sequestered at home, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me in deciding that I needed my own space. And so I didn't want to move unless it was, a serious upgrade, both in space and really just in all the things that I wanted. And so I started looking for a house in Oklahoma City, and this one, had been on the market for a little bit. I looked at it almost a year later and then decided, let's look at it again. And it appealed to me for a couple reasons. One, I love the location. And then I needed, for what I do, I needed a lot of square footage, but I also needed a lot of walls. So I was looking for kind of the opposite of what everyone else is looking for. I didn't want an open floor plan. I wanted a closed floor plan. I wanted a couple of big spaces that could accommodate my specific collections, including the pottery behind me, because I knew I needed a big wall of built-ins to display those. And eventually, this house started looking like maybe it could work. One of the biggest changes I made was to take out an entire bathroom and closet adjacent to this room and to turn that into a space for a bed, and then it's already connected to the other full bathroom. And so now I have a little secret primary suite off of this room, and then that left this room that I could convert into a den. Mainly, the goal was to construct these shelves that are behind me so that I could display this white pottery collection. Okay, so we're in what I call the pot den. This was originally the primary suite for this house, and so I converted it into a den so that I could hold my pottery collection and then a number of other things. On this wall, I have some religious memorabilia and art. It kind of appeals to me because the colors are always really rich and interesting, and there's just something about it that I enjoy and like. It also kind of combines has some crossover with some of the collections that I have. For instance, this piece is made out of tramp art, and so that one appeals to me for a couple different reasons. This piece of art is something that I made. This is an African textile that I got on eBay, and I affixed it to just a pretty standard frame, and then put the art light there. And then as we come around this way, I've got more religious art that I have put around my television. I do like to watch TV, although I don't love having TVs in my spaces. I do have several of them, and here I've got a frame TV that you can put art on it, and it kind of blends in with the wall. And so under the TV, I've got one of my favorite pieces of furniture. This is by a company called Noir Furniture, and it's actually a hutch with some storage where I have games and things, but the wood cutout application on the front I always thought was really cool. It's one of the pieces of furniture that a lot of people comment the most about when they come over. Most everything here is either from antique malls or flea markets, online sources. Other than the Noir piece, nothing is new. These are some cool lucite chairs, also from a local antique store. I kind of like to mix mid-century modern with old, and then a few contemporary pieces. For instance, the large gray sofa and the sort of rattan coffee table in the center of the room, those are both Jonathan Adler pieces, which are, he's a contemporary potter who also sells home furnishings. I've always been a fan of his. And then under that, I just have layered rugs. I really like Killam rugs because of the colors and the shapes, sort of organic shapes that they have. And so in here, I've just layered a few. This is probably my most monochromatic room in a way, because there's not a lot of different colors in here, even though there are a lot of textures. So, I guess in that vein, maximalism isn't just about lots of different colors in the same space. It could be about lots of textures, lots of big prints, lots of things. And so this room is maximal, but there really aren't a ton of different colors in here. It's really just the oranges and sort of the earth tones. So then as we work our way around, we really get to the main wall in this room, which is one of the reasons that I bought the house, and was to accommodate this pottery collection. This is all American-made mid-century pottery, and it's all in matte or satin, white or cream. There's probably 6 or 8 different manufacturers represented here. One of the most common ones, and probably the most prevalent in my collection, is McCoy Pottery. You may have heard about that. They were prolific in manufacturing pottery in the United States for many, many years, and with several different companies actually in the family that made that pottery. And I started collecting it at least 25 years ago. At the time, my rule was it's got to be satin finish, and I wouldn't pay more than $10 for any single piece. In building a collection, that tends to be the way that I do it. I will assemble a large number of the pieces before I invest in the rarer and the harder to find pieces. But it really is a dream come true for me to finally get this pottery out and to display it like this. And it is a lot of work. The number one question that I get on Instagram everywhere is, how do you dust? Who dusts? All the things. And so far, I have been the only person who has dusted in this entire house. And I'm not saying that will continue to be the case, but at least so far, it's all done by me. And it's a lot of work. And so, even preparing, for this tour today, I've touched every single surface, I think, in this house, and every single object, and really for the first time since I moved in and finished remodeling. And so it is a labor of love, and I'm enjoying it for now, and maybe at some point it won't be as practical of a way to live, but for now I'm having fun. I'm not really a person who has favorites, but I do kind of have a couple pieces of this pottery that stand out. One of them, if you can see on the top shelf, are the 2 tall pieces and the shorter piece that have fins. And so sometimes those are called, it's a bit of an Art Deco design, and a lot of people call them fin vases, and I'll try to point them out. There's a short one here, and then a very small one, and then 2 taller ones. Those are kind of a favorite. I really like that design, and they're pretty hard to find. So that's one that stands out to me. So a couple of the newer things that I have in the den. One is this chair. It's a plywood chair that is made in this sort of grate format and then carved out to make a seat. And it's actually surprisingly comfortable. It was made by or sold by a company that was based in Dallas called Wisteria. They used to have catalogs that came out all the time, and I think they've since discontinued doing that. But they had an outlet store in Dallas, and on one of my trips into Texas for work, on the way back, I stopped in and saw the chair and loved it. And so I've had it for maybe 12 years, and it's definitely a favorite and sort of a chair that a lot of people ask about. Also new in this space is the chandelier. It's giving kind of sea urchin vibes a little bit, and it's also probably hard to dust like my pottery collection, and so I must have an affinity for things that are high maintenance. But I loved the color, and I loved the interesting shape. It is a Kelly Wearstler design, and so it's a new piece as well. And so I like to mix, new with the old. So then as we work our way around here, in this corner, I have a collection of shell art. It is just something that appealed to me. It's kind of, I don't really know, I like organic things, and I like natural things, and so I think it appealed to me for that reason. But there's also something just about the assemblage of all of these small things to create these boxes and frames that is kind of similar to how I display my collections. And so I think it's a little bit of an exemplified way of doing what I do with my collections, is kind of exemplified in the way that people create these pieces with all the small, tiny shells. Maximalist definitely describes my design aesthetic, and the other ways to describe it sound pretty cliche, but they're true, which is it's very eclectic, it's very collected. I have things that I bought many, many years ago, and when I bought them, I envisioned my future self living in a place kind of like this, where I would have those items that I loved back then, and I was hopeful that I would like them in the future. And so it's a very time-worn, aesthetic that I was committed to for a very long time. I mentioned some of these collections that I've been collecting for over 20 years, 25 years, and that is a commitment. That is, you're all in, and I didn't get tired of it. I didn't deviate from that, and it was a slow and fun process, really with a long-term vision of how I wanted to display it and could see it way down the road. I never knew for sure if I would ever have a place that like this, where I could do that, but that was always sort of my goal. So I've always had this really long-term vision of the spaces that I wanted. That's not to say that your taste doesn't change. It definitely does. There are definitely things that I bought and later I'll be like, why did I buy that? Or I don't want that anymore. But mine is, my aesthetic is very much personal. It's not for everybody. I know that. And I usually hope that if it's an aesthetic that some people might not want in their own home, that they at least can appreciate, I guess, the art that I'm trying to express and the work that it takes to curate and display things like this at my house, because it is a lot of work. All right, so come on in and now I'll show you the primary bedroom hidden behind the bookcase doors. This is my bedroom, and it was originally a bathroom and a closet. So the front part of this room was a full bathroom, and then it transitioned into a walk-in closet. As we looked at the floor plans for the house originally, we realized that when this house was a duplex, it was originally a bedroom. And so by removing the bathroom and the closet, which is a little unconventional to take out a bathroom, but this house still has 3 full bathrooms, and so it's not a problem. It was about a 15 by 15 space, which is plenty of room for a queen size bed and a chair and everything you need in a bedroom. And so then this room sort of became home to all of my sort of science collectibles. I've got scientific models in here that are German or European in nature, and just a variety of displays of shells and arrowheads and things that are very organic. But probably the coolest thing in here is this collection of mushroom specimens that are over the bed. These are European. I think a lot of them are German, and they are, scale models of a variety of mushroom specimens. I just think they're super cool. It's probably not super practical to have them in here, but they're okay for now, and I'm really enjoying them. So as a maximalist, one of the things that you try to do is to pull all your rooms together in some way, even though you have so many different types of things around. And so color is a good way to do that. And I do try to have a balance of color throughout my house and scale and shape. And so when sort of designing this room, the wall color is actually the same color as the background in the pot den shelving that houses the white pottery. So behind the pottery is this, it's called chamois. It's kind of almost like a peanut butter or caramel color. And so I pulled that into this room, and it also worked in here with the things that I wanted to put in. Another sort of accent color that I have throughout the house is sort of this Kelly green that's on the blanket on the bed, which is also the color of the top of the light fixture in the center of the room. And so there is some continuity. There's a sort of a thread of similar colors throughout the house. And I also used black, it's called caviar, but it's almost a black with a little bit of blue in it on all my doors and on a lot of the window trims and things like that, to sort of ground these spaces and serve as a sort of a neutral backdrop for all the crazy colors and things that I have. So I created an Instagram account to share my collections, and I started that because I didn't want to force feed my hobby on my friends and family who were following me on my personal Instagram. So I thought, well, I'll create a new one. It'll be a place where maybe like-minded collectors and things like that could, interact with my hobby. And I kind of wanted a handle that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and so Not a Minimalist came to mind. It's easy to remember, it's easy to spell, and I started this Instagram maybe, I don't know, 7 years ago maybe, and before long it sort of took on a life of its own. I had this sort of alter ego as Not a Minimalist, which is what I am not. I am not a minimalist, and around that same time, maximalism, which has kind of always been around, I think, became a little bit of a trendy buzzword too. So I kind of lucked out a little bit in creating my account dedicated to maximalism and maximalist design at kind of a good time. But yeah, surprisingly, it kind of resonates with a lot of people, and I think it's definitely a counterpoint to a lot of the very sort of clinical and monochromatic spaces that don't have a lot of personality. And I think the interest in that aesthetic that I have that kind of increased after the pandemic is maybe because people were home so much and they wanted something that wasn't so boring, and maybe they wanted more things around for interest. But for me, it's just an expression of my personal aesthetic. I really do intentionally try to avoid fads and the look of the day, and to not be referential in what I'm doing. And so you kind of, it's interesting to look at Instagram and all of the accounts for inspiration and magazines and all those things, but at some point it's kind of also good not to look at all of those things, and to see what you can generate just out of your own brain. So this is the dining room. This is one of the rooms that the prior owner renovated and expanded when she did the renovation. And I have never had a real dining room before, so I was excited to do that and to get a real dining room table. That is one of my favorite things about this room is the dining room table. This is a newer piece by Noir Furniture, the same company that made the sideboard that is in my den. That's very interesting, and I just loved the chunky legs on this table, and I also loved the black that is similar to the wall color that I've used in other spaces. I knew that I wanted to hang this wall of vintage portraits in this room, and they're super colorful, and so that was the springboard for the wall color, which is called Shinkle Green. It's Annie Sloan's new wall paint, and it was so great, and the color is perfect for these portraits. The chandelier that you see is really probably not my taste per se. It was in the house when I bought the house. I was on the fence as to whether to try and incorporate it or to change it. I was originally planning to change it, and then as I started to furnish the room and I was taking some snapshots, and I would see the chandelier adjacent to some of my really rough, I guess you would say, art, I kind of liked it. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'll try putting black lampshades on it and kind of tie it in with the rest of the lighting in the house that I'm using. And so it's still here. And so I've kind of grown to like it. I think the mixture of that, something that is very much more precious than typically what I would put in the house, against some of the things that I use, is kind of interesting. So I like it. So I bought the table for the dining room, and then I needed chairs. And so one day I was headed to work and from the neighborhood, and somebody down the street was having a garage sale. So I saw some chairs in the driveway, and so I pulled in and I bought 6 of these, probably, I guess, 1980s. I think sometimes they're called waterfall chairs. I'm not sure if that's exactly what these are called. And they were all upholstered in a velvet and needed reupholstering. So they lived in my garage for quite a few months until I decided to get them reupholstered. And then I decided to do them in all different colors. I have 2 that are in black and then 4 that are just in random colors that I pulled from the portraits on the wall. Then later I was in Santa Fe going to antique stores and consignment stores, and I came across the two head chairs, which are upholstered in a variety of Killam fabrics. These are vintage Surratt & Sons. That Surratt & Sons is a company based in Santa Fe that sort of pioneered upholstery with these Killam rugs, and so you'll find couches and a variety of different upholstered pieces that they made through the years. And these are another one of my favorite things in the house. These chairs are really great, and that's where they're from. And then in the center of the table, I just have a collection of vintage brass candlesticks that I've put sort of chopped off black candles in, just to sort of tie in the brass and to give some interest in the center of the table. But probably the thing in the dining room that I get the most questions about is the wall of portraits. These were all painted by a guy named Claire Seglem, who lived in Oklahoma City, and I think he was about 93 when he passed away a few years ago, and his family was having an estate sale at his house, and an Instagram friend of mine messaged me, "Hey, I know you like vintage portraits. I was just at an estate sale, and the gentleman was a painter and had tons of art." And she sent me a couple of photos of these portraits, and I immediately, jumped up and ran to the estate sale and bought about 50 of these portraits, and they're just so special. He painted them in the 80s at a studio in Oklahoma City where the subjects would, I guess, show up and model for the painters. And so they're all from, mid to late 1980s. And his daughters subsequently discovered that I had acquired a lot of his paintings and was sharing them on Instagram, and that people were appreciating them, and they were, really happy about that. And one of them mentioned to me, she's like, "Well, his signature was the elongated noses." And so then I observed that, yeah, I can see that they kind of all have a similarly elongated nose, which probably makes them kind of work together as a group. So over in this corner of the dining room is a cabinet that I got at Goodwill, and it contains a collection of miniature furniture. So there's a company called Vitra, and for many years they have made these miniature scale models of famous mid-century furniture. And there's something about them that always appealed to me, and so over the years I have collected a variety of them. So for instance, in the living room we saw my full-scale size wiggle chair, which is made out of cardboard that is laminated together, and they have a similar chair, and I think I may get the fraction wrong, but I think it's a 1/6 scale model of those of the chair, and it's also made out of cardboard that is laminated together to give it stability, and each piece is replicated using as close to the same kinds of materials as the large pieces that they can do. And so there's just something sort of fascinating about that. And I've got a variety of chairs and ottomans, and it's just another collection that I've enjoyed building. And they're special enough that they really needed a cabinet that would prevent them from getting dusty and things like that. So coming out of the dining room, we go into the east hallway, and this is where I've hung really a whole gallery of what is typically referred to as yard-long photos. These are vintage and antique group photos that were often 36 inches long, and so the term yard long was coined to kind of generally describe them, although a lot of them are either much larger or much smaller. And so I began collecting those many years ago and just kept going. And so these could be, a lot of them are military, a lot of them are businesses, business meetings, colleges, groups of kids. a band. There's just something interesting about it, about them, and now my collection has gotten so large that I kind of only focus on ones that have some unconventional subject matter. Aside from people, maybe there are animals or buildings or plants, things like that that are appealing to me. So this is one of my spare bathrooms, and in here I probably made one of my more practical decisions, which is to cover the walls in a collection of vintage tourist plates. So, you know, it's a bathroom that doesn't get used all that often, and so it lends itself to being a little unconventional on the walls. But this is another collection that I started by going to estate sales frequently and seeing these pieces often for 10 cents or 25 cents, and eventually I started collecting it. It's very kitschy, and I resisted collecting it for a long time, but then the more I saw it, the more they appealed to me, and so I started collecting these maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and when I moved in, I kind of wanted somewhere to put them, and so this bathroom seemed kind of a fun place to do it. As I said, it's not particularly practical, but it's kind of made for a fun conversation piece. In looking at the tourist plates, there was something about this sort of mustard color that made sense with them, and it's a color that I've repeated in my kitchen, and it also kind of echoes back to the colors that I used in the pottery den in the back of the house. And so that was the color that I chose for the walls. And then since this is a functioning bathroom and has a shower, it needed a curtain, and so this shower curtain was one that I had made. I found this fabric that is reminiscent of the Killam rugs that I have throughout the house, and so I had someone local turn it into a shower curtain. It's really hard to come up with the favorite thing about my home, honestly. I often say to my friends that I don't have favorite things, and that's kind of true. I have always had a difficult time picking a favorite food or a favorite anything, for whatever reason, I don't know why. But I guess the favorite thing is just being able to do, it's actually both my favorite thing and potentially the least favorite thing is being able to do whatever you want to do, because I thought moving into my own house that it would be really great to be able to paint whatever wall, whatever color you want, to put things wherever you want, to make a hole in the wall wherever you want. I've always been, obviously I have a ton of things on the wall, so I am not careful with my sheetrock, and that is kind of a favorite thing, to be able to do whatever you want. But it's also can be not such a favorite thing, not such a good thing, because when the options are limitless, there's a lot of noise that creates, and so it can be difficult to kind of pare down to the right thing to do. And that's what some designers are really good about. I don't really call myself a designer per se, but I found out that I'm a really slow designer. I'm a really slow decision maker, and it took me quite a while to get to the place that I am. So this is the room that I use as my office. It's actually a bedroom that I've decided to use for working, and I've got a couple collections in here. One is this collection of swirl pottery that's called Namaji pottery. It was another tourist pottery that was sold for many years in the United States. I usually say it's the pottery that I hated so much that I started to love it, because I guess I got to the end of hate and there was nowhere to go but to start liking it. And so then I started collecting it, and I sort of decided that I thought it looked very cool as a group as opposed to individual pieces, which are maybe not particularly appealing on their own. I think they are a lot of fun together. So I've got a big cabinet over there and then another cabinet full here. In addition to that, I have an assortment of vintage caricatures. These were made by kind of like they are today, either on the sidewalks of New York or San Francisco or New Orleans or at fairs. and state fairs and things like that. And so these were made in a variety of places around the country. Interestingly, though, I accidentally started acquiring ones that were by the same artist. And so I could tell by the colors and the style of the caricature, and then when I started sitting down and looking at signatures, I realized that some of them were by the same caricature artist. So they're a favorite. Now we're in my kitchen, and the kitchen was particularly a little bit of a challenge for me. I've never really decorated a kitchen or been able to decorate a kitchen. And what I wanted in a kitchen was something that looked old. I mean, I think I wanted sort of I'm not sure I achieved it, but I'm a big fan of the unfitted kitchens that you see in European homes that have been there for a long time and have a combination of cabinetry and freestanding furniture. And so originally I'd planned to gut this space and start over, but that just didn't make sense because I don't feel like a person that should have brand new cabinets, especially since I'm playing with crazy colors and bright colors and sort of unconventional things in the kitchen. So ultimately I kept the footprint of the kitchen the way it was. This house was built in 1977, and so I think the footprint of the kitchen is pretty much as it was when it was built. The prior owner, I think, added a few of the upper cabinets in the dinette area, but otherwise everything seems original. And I kept the countertops that the prior owner had installed. They were the color is kind of similar to the concrete floors that you see in the house that we did a grind and seal on. It was kind of a happy accident that those floors turned out kind of interesting and that the color kind of matched the countertops that were in the kitchen. I did, however, change all of the appliances, and I changed all of the hardware on the cabinets. I relocated the knobs for the cabinets. They were center mounted in the cabinet door, which was a very 1977 thing to do. And so I actually physically did all that myself. I painted all the cabinets in the kitchen. I had professionals for most of the house, but in here I kind of decided that I needed to do it myself because I kind of wanted to experiment with colors. And so I spent maybe 6 weekends in a row taking all of the cabinet doors off and putting on new hardware and painting all of the cabinets. And so it kind of took on a little bit of a Mexican feel in here, and not the least of which of the reasons why is due to the backsplash that I had installed. And so the backsplash is obviously very colorful. It is a terracotta tile that is from Mexico, and when you order it, when you just get a box of a variety of colors, you really don't know how many of each color you're going to get or what you're going to get. And so they're also all slightly different shapes. And so the tile guy who installed the tile was very diligent in trying to make them as square as possible. And then he was very good at tolerating me being about a few steps in front of him, laying out the colors in the pattern that I wanted on the wall so that not too many of them were side by side and that sort of thing. So I would lay out the tile and he would work for an hour, and then I would come in and he would be caught up to what I had done, and so then I would lay the tile out some more. So he was very tolerant with that, which would probably be annoying to a lot of contractors. I also changed out the sink and did a lot of brass hardware in here. One thing that's challenging about using the existing footprint in a house, and this is probably a no-brainer, is that it's a little bit of a needle in a haystack to find appliances that fit in the existing spaces, especially if you're looking for a particular color or finish. And I really fell in love with the black stainless steel and the brass accents, but the manufacturer of my refrigerator and dishwasher did not have a 27-inch double oven. So I had to find a different double oven that was complementary to those colors to fit there. And then I had a gas stovetop put in where it was electric before. So kind of had fun doing the kitchen and continued the black caviar walls in here as well. And then have a collection of a new collection because I've been buying it recently, these Mexican small plates that I've hung around the top of the kitchen. Okay, so adjacent to the kitchen is a pretty typical dinette area, and I have breakfast. This is where I have my coffee every morning and watch the news on my iPad. And I wanted a table in here, but I kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit. So this is another example where I incorporate something very modern with these sort of older things. This is a tulip table from Design Within Reach, and I've paired it with a couple of chairs in white. These green chairs, wooden chairs, I bought at the Canton Flea Market outside of Dallas, Texas, many, many years ago, and have never really used them until now. So on the table, I've got a variety of these, what are called caged glass pieces. These are Mexican made. It's another sort of brutalist design that I've been a fan of for a while. So I've got a number of these in different colors of glassware and pitchers and vases. And so I just think they go well with the aesthetic in the kitchen. This is new dinnerware, kind of in a similar color scheme as some of the older Mexican pottery. I've got a vintage McCoy piece with the flowers in it, another Killam rug in here, and just a variety of still life art pieces. I've actually got a pretty large still life art collection over in this corner. I think a home exhibits soul when you can tell from what's in it a little bit about the person who occupies the house. And I think that's why a lot, you want to inject some personality into your space. You want to have some things that are different from everybody else. You want to make decisions that are a little unique, to inject a little personality. And I think that gives a house or a home more soul. I mean, I think obviously people walk into my house and they kind of have an idea of what, maybe what's going on in my brain a little bit, could be a lot. If you have a very sparse house, it's harder to tell anything about who occupies it in that way. So this room off of the entryway, I call the library. It's because it had these built-in shelves, and I think the former owner used it as a bit of an office. And I kind of got it styled and set up as a little bit of a sitting area, and also with another table and chairs that would be fun for putting food if you have people over, or maybe for playing a game. One of the things I liked about this room obviously was the shelving. I decided to paint it the sort of Kelly green to echo the color that I have in the dining room. And then as we talked earlier about the color in my bedroom, and then I have pops of this color throughout the house to hold a variety of things. There's, at the top of these shelves is another collection of pottery that is also McCoy pottery and other manufacturers similar to the white pottery that I have. It's just in black. It's a little harder to find. They didn't make quite as many pieces in black, probably for obvious reasons that it maybe wasn't as appealing to folks at the time, but it's something that I enjoy collecting. And then I just have a variety of other things in the shelves. In the center of this room, I've got a table that came from Goodwill that I painted. I've got a set of these really interesting chairs that are upholstered with this Killam style rug. These actually were in my hometown in Mississippi, which was kind of funny to me that I was able to find those right in my own backyard. And so I didn't do anything to them other than just give them a light cleaning. Another upholstered piece in Killam, and then just a small couch that sometimes I like to sit over there or lay over there and watch TV. And I do have a little roll-away TV that's on a stand that I stash away in a closet and roll out and put near there if I want to kind of huddle up in this room and watch TV. The word home to me, I guess, means a lot of different things. It's obviously a literal place where you live, but it's also more than that. And I grew up in Mississippi, and I haven't lived there though in over 20 years, maybe even 25 years, but I still call that home. And that's because it's familiar to me, it's comfortable to me. There are people there who love me, and lifelong friends and things like that. And so I think it will always be home to me. But Oklahoma City has also become home to me for the same reasons now, because it's familiar to me, it's comfortable to me, and luckily there are people here who I think love me as well. Homeworthy, this has been great, but I need you guys to leave because I've got to get in the car and drive to Santa Fe because there's an estate sale tomorrow where I'm hoping to buy more pottery that I collect. So, goodbye.
Hey Homeworthy, I'm Mimo. Welcome to my home in coastal Delaware. I'd love to show you around.
This summer, spend the hottest months of the year in style with Homeworthy as we visit the most extraordinary homes around the world. From the sun-soaked shores of the Hamptons to the classic beachfronts of Nantucket to the vibrant courtyards of Morocco, be sure to subscribe to Homeworthy's summer series to make every day feel like a vacation. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name's Mimo. I'm an interior decorator, an artist, and a shop owner of Le Cabinet of Curiosity. Welcome to my home in coastal Delaware. So I'm from New York City. I spent 20 years there working in the fashion industry in a very fast-paced job that had me travel 70% of the time. What was lacking was a bit of creativity. I was inspired by the fashion that was around me, but I didn't really have my hand in it. So any opportunity that I could travel for myself, whether it was overseas or across the country, this was something that I always really enjoyed and loved doing. I had friends that had beach houses here in Delaware, and just kind of on a whim, my two nieces were studying at FIT in the city as well. And for Memorial Day, we decided that we would take a quick little trip over, like a weekend trip to Rehoboth. We got here, it was May, it was really cold, so we couldn't go swimming, we couldn't really do anything that we had planned in our mind. So it was just a casual, fun weekend, but we still really enjoyed our time here. And that kind of sat with me in a really great way because my first memory here was just so fun, and it was with family. And I had been looking for an apartment in the city for a really long time, and it was very cutthroat. And this was 10 years ago. And so I decided that I would look outside of the city. I was looking in upstate New York, and then, Delaware just kept speaking to me, and I decided that I would come to Delaware for another weekend and look at houses. And before I knew it, I was buying this house, which was the 13th house I saw in one day. And I fell in love with it. It was really that simple. I walked in to the house and I knew that it was mine. It had been abandoned for over a year. The whole house was kind of like this weird yellowy color on the inside. Everything was unkept, covered in dust, and it almost spoke to me in a way. And it was really inspiring in that moment. And I felt like it was just kismet, I guess. So I walked through, and I think I went from the front door through the living room into the dining room, and I turned around, and it was just like one of the movies that you see, and I was like, this is my house. He's like, I'm sure you want to see the rest of it. But I really knew in that moment, and I started to walk around. I took it all in. Obviously, it's an older house, and there were updates made to it that made it a little bit less true to its period, but I still could see the potential there, and I knew that it had to be mine. So welcome to my living room. This is my absolute favorite room in the house. Obviously, I like to put some of my favorite treasures here, so it's quite layered, but being a maximalist is, something that I really embrace. And so layering all of the things that I really love, I feel like make this a home. And one of my favorite things is this pair of 1930s hand-painted eyeglasses. So this came from an optician's shop. And it was one of the first antiques I actually found here in Delaware. I went into an antique store I had never been in before, and I saw them kind of hanging high on a wall, and I was like, I think because I've worn glasses my whole life, since second grade, I saw the glasses and I felt like a connection to them quite quickly. And so I put them, a lot of people give me the reference of Great Gatsby, because I've put these up at a high kind of like perched spot, but it's almost like that concept of like evil eye. Like I have these eyes watching over me all the time, protecting me. So I really enjoy them. And for me, this is an example of something that is artistic. It was, a sign at one point, and now it lives its life here in Delaware at a beach house, Something that I really love in my house is this. This is one of the first ship paintings that I've ever purchased for the house. And it was quite interesting because it's unfinished. It's from the 1920s. The person who painted it never actually painted the sea. And so it was sold as is. And to me, it was perfect. And then I paired it with a frame that doesn't actually fit it. So it kind of accentuates the fact that it's imperfect. You might have seen this little tooth, this little walnut tooth that I have as well. It does open up. I love the shape and the sculpture aspect of molars. And so I started to collect them. And this was maybe the third one I've ever found. And what I really loved about it was just that it was oversized and a little exaggerated and a little bit odd. And to me, that was, that makes for good decor. So I'll take you over to kind of this little nook that I have. Here I have a lot of my molars that I collect. My favorite molar is this early 1800s molar. It's made out of paper mache. It actually opens up. It's made by the Azu family. So Dr. Azu found that it was difficult to have, funny enough, it was difficult to have like cadavers in medical school because they weren't readily available. So instead, what he would do is he would create things out of paper mache. So everything from like insects to animals to molars. And this is a actual Azu, Dr. Azu molar. And this is actually one of the pieces that made me fall in love with molars so much, and the second molar I ever found. So I have another walnut molar here, and then plaster, 1950s ceramic. And then one of my favorites is this wooden piece. It's hand carved and it opens up. And I thought that was quite interesting. So it's, again, the sculptural aspect of the molars is really what fascinates me, and really has interested me over time. This is one of my favorite paintings that I have in the house. It's from 1913. And again, it's like it was sold as is because it has a rip through it, but it's all of these imperfect pieces that really speak to me. And I paired it with this kind of faux bamboo looking frame and gave it an art light. And the topic is quite interesting. It's like a Neanderthal fighting a lion. And to me, it kind of spoke to that like traveler, and that's kind of wandering around in my head, or maybe even a time traveler. So really love that piece. My mantle is one of my favorite spots in the home. The mantle is original to the house. So the mantle is from 1800, so it's 225 years old. However, at some point they added this Oak Ridge kind of cauldron, which I found quite interesting. But here I kind of collect all of my favorite treasures. So all of the corals that I found over time, I love putting them in urns. I think it makes them look really interesting. This is a really cool Bob Sanders painting. At the time that I purchased it, I didn't know that there was a following for Bob Sanders. And I want to say it's from the 1950s. But what I loved about it was how dramatic the frame is and the pairing with this beautiful, very intricate oil painting of a ship at sea. Another favorite item of mine is this pair of foo dogs. Oftentimes you see foo dogs and they look a little gnarly, and these to me really kind of spoke to the oddity factor that I'm always looking for. Their eyes are bugged out. They have really beautiful color and intricate details. These were a thrift store find. And what was really interesting is I think they're one of a kind. And when I tried to look them up online, the only one I could find was one that had been sold out of an estate. And funny enough, I matched the chips and all of the things, so I found out it was actually the piece from that sale. But I love how vibrant the color is and how it really sets the tone for all of the natural elements here on the fireplace. Funny story about the ceiling. So when I bought this house, it had been abandoned for a year. There was water damage to the entire ceiling. And I tried to figure out a way that was cost effective that would allow me to refine the ceiling without, blowing the bank, right? So I had looked at some different coastal cottages online, and I got the inspiration of using beadboard. So I thought, how easy could that be? Buy some beadboard, tack it up to the ceiling. Yeah, no, it took 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks and 3 different friends to be able to get all of this beadboard on the ceiling. And it really wasn't until the last few weeks that the trim work was actually put up. So I lived with it unfinished for a really long time, and I hate saying it, but I'm glad to kind of finally see it finished. What I love about the beadboard ceiling is it has a really nice reflective element to it. So whenever there's like candles on or the lights are on, you can see that reflecting in the ceiling, and I have so much fun with that. The sconces that were original to the house used to be here, and I wasn't able to restore them. And luckily, on a trip to Maryland, I was able to find these wheat sconces, which were really fun. I felt like they were traditional enough that it spoke to kind of the house's character and detail, but they were a very weird color. And so I just a little bit of spray paint and finding the right light bulbs, and I was able to bring them back to life. And I feel like it complements my fireplace quite well. I have little corners everywhere that are really comfortable. So here's in this corner, I often read, I hang out, I have a drink. I obviously like to be surrounded by my things. My couch is one of my favorite places. When I was looking for a couch for the main living room, this living room does not have a TV in it. So it's strictly for socializing and hanging out and chatting with one another. So I wanted a nice deep couch that was comfortable and that allowed me to host a lot of people at one time. And what I really loved about this couch too is that it was a nice neutral base for the rest of the living room. Obviously over time that didn't work for me because my maximalist mindset put me in a position where I started to add pillows. I added pillows, I changed pillows. Some of the original pillows are inside, the new covers, but they're comfortable, and I know that it looks very orchestrated right now, but when friends come over, I'm like, rip it apart, get comfortable, use all of the pillows. That's something that I really enjoy about having a good seating area. Another one of my favorite paintings in the house. I will say I have a lot of art in this house. Paintings are probably my favorite form of art, and every single wall has a painting on it. This painting has quite an interesting story. I wasn't really shopping eBay too much at the time when I started to search for ship paintings and other things. And I had this one moment, one day where I wanted to search for equestrian paintings. This happened to pop up, and I loved the scale of it. It's about 5 feet wide, and it was just very dark and moody, and the horse has this crazy look in its eyes. After winning the auction, the quote came through to ship it to me, which was like 4 times the price of the painting itself. And so I looked up where the seller was, and they were in the Poconos, and I'd never been. And I'm like, okay, great. Pennsylvania, that's like an hour away, right? No, it was like 4 hours. There was no cell phone service. It was, in the middle of nowhere in this large cabin. But I secured the painting and I brought it back to Delaware, and now it lives proudly over my couch. So absolutely love that piece. A new find for me, something that I really had been on the hunt for a very long time, was a coffee table that I could work into this space. I needed needed it to be a certain size. I needed it to complement the couch that was already here. And I needed enough space for me to house books that I like reading on the couch, and then all of my treasures on top, and just enough space for some coasters for a drink. I came across this, I think it's called a library table. It's from 1830 was the date that I was given. So intricate, really beautiful wood carved details all the way around. It does have a drawer and these great brass ball feet. And instead of the normal like crystal or glass that you see that the claws adhere to, they're wooden spheres, which I thought was quite interesting. Someone had refinished the top on this piece, and it just was calling to me. It looked lush and beautiful and well taken care of. It came from the seller's home. So they were only the second owner. So I was really excited to have something that I was only the third owner of and will definitely live with me forever. After purchasing this house and learning a little bit more about it, I found out, well, I knew its age initially, obviously. So it was built in 1800. It's 225 years old. It was really funny because when I told my parents that I was buying this house, the first thing that they said to me was, why would you buy such an old house? Wouldn't it just like fall down on you? And to me, it was the complete opposite. The fact that it was standing for so long was really a reason for me to purchase it. I started off thinking that I was going to do I guess it was full circle because I wanted to do this very dark and moody thing, but it was a bit kitschy when I started. And then I shifted to nautical, but not the nautical that I have today. It was a bit more kitschy as well. And I think I was just trying to understand, how can I decorate such a big space and still make it feel like it was genuine to who I was, to what my aesthetic was. And so as I started to explore the town, I started to go to different antique shops, vintage shops, estate sales, thrift stores, and I started to see all of the beautiful things that people had let go of. And it was really shocking to me because anywhere I've lived before, those things weren't as accessible for me. In New York City, it's just everything's priced really crazy. So here I was really able to find beautiful things that spoke to me and that really helped identify the traveler artist that I was in my mind. So slowly but surely, there were so many things that I initially bought that kind of went out the door, and then I started to identify exactly what I liked and curate the house that you see today. So the staircase in my home is central to the home, but it's across from the entrance of the house. So I'm gonna walk you through the foyer a little bit. But I did want to stop here because the ship gallery wall is, I'm going to say a lot of things are my favorites, but it's obvious because it's my house and I bring all of my favorite things. But the idea behind this, and I know the concept of a gallery wall going up a staircase might seem pretty average, but the reason why I wanted specifically ships at sea was because I wanted them to look like little windows that were going out to different worlds. So that's kind of how I explain it to people. Each ship painting is from a different period. They're done in different ways. Some have fancy frames, some do not. There's a seascape or two kind of worked in there as well. But the idea here really was to kind of play on color, texture, painting style. So the oldest painting that's on this wall is probably from 1845, and the newest painting is from present day. It's like I think it's like 2009. So there's really just kind of a great mix of everything on this wall, and that's why I love it. And so when clients or friends come to talk to me about how they can start a gallery wall, I bought this painting and then I bought those two paintings and I just threw them all up. And so they always want to talk to me about being afraid of putting holes into the wall. But honestly, if you remove this gallery wall, there's probably 50 holes in this wall. And you just adjust it until you get it right. I don't believe in the whole mapping out the wall and trying to get everything to fit one specific way. For me, it's really about how do you create an organic image while you're walking up the stairs? And then you get to peek into all of these fun different worlds. At the bottom of my staircase, I have, this was a find from last year. It's an antique horsehair filled couch. And what I loved about this off the bat was the shape. The wood detailing on the back, the claw feet on the bottom. So many aspects of this were so interesting to me. I think the fabric on it is slightly newer. I was told it was, there was actually a note that was pinned to this, which was quite interesting. And the note just dated the couch, and then it also said that they thought the fabric was from early 1900s. But the fact that it was horsehair filled, I thought that was so interesting. It's kept its shape all of this time, and it's really quite comfortable. And the best thing about it was I was at Habitat Restore, and nobody wanted this couch. It was on their clearance area. It was $10. And for me, I loved the combination of the colors, the shape, the history to it. And so when I'm looking for vintage and antiques, I always think about how I can rescue something that I'll really enjoy and bring it to life and kind of integrate it into my own house. One thing I do want to show really quickly is this little table. So what's cool about this table, so it has two little places for a coaster, but this is from the 40s. And so this little drawer comes out and it shows the different type of cigarettes and things that people could store inside. So you'd have your drinks, you would have your cigarettes, and now it's become a really great place to have a cocktail during happy hour, which is really any time during the day, especially when you work for yourself. Looking on this wall, I really wanted to make sure that there was a balance to the ship wall in the background. Since that's kind of the star of the show. When you enter the house, this is the first thing that you see. And so I have Felix here. Felix is a really interesting story. There's a painting on the back of it it looked like a still life that somebody didn't like and they painted over it. Then they decided to use the reverse of the canvas to paint this figure. So that to me was so interesting. And what I did is I just hung it like that. It's not actually framed. This is the actual, just the wood framing for the canvas. And it almost feels like you have a little friend to hang out with when you're sitting on my $10 couch. This little corner was my first curiosity cabinet in the house. I have a handful of them, but when I'm out shopping and collecting things, I find so many littles that I absolutely love. And I wanted a way to display them all. And there's no rhyme or reason. It's just kind of thrown in there. But what's great about these cabinets is that you don't have to dust anything inside of them. Because I know that's everyone's first question. It's like, okay, how do you keep everything clean? Honestly, I don't dust that much. So these little kind of oddities and trinkets and antique things just hang out in here and tell their own story. On the top, I have the oldest painting in the house. So I bought this from a seller in Canada a few years ago. It's from the 1700s. It's, they had a huge disclaimer. It's falling apart. The paint is chipping off. The frame is broken. I loved how moody the ships were against the foggy sky. And so one of the first things that I did was made sure that I restored from the back the frame, so that way I could keep this painting as long as possible. And I just let it live on as it is. So it's chipping. Every year I find little pieces of it on the ground. But what I love about it is it tells a story on its own. And then for a while I collected ironstone. I kind of go through these cycles of what I like to collect. So when I had all white ironstone on top of here, I got a little bored. So obviously I started to integrate things that I loved, shells, corals, little tchotchkes and things that I thought were fun and interesting in one way or another, or like even a pair of candles that I thought were quite pretty. This table was another fun find. This was a roadside find, so it was free. And I just loved how wide it was. And I thought, okay, how can I create something in the foyer that's still interesting and engaging? And I came up with this idea called a discovery table, which I took from like the museum, basically. They create these for kids to touch and feel insects and animals and rocks and all of these other things. So I wanted tables that were interactive in that same sense. So someone might look at this and say, oh, it's just a vignette, a collection of a vignette of a collection, which is true. But the idea here is to also play into the sensory thing. So, you know, I have a little piece of artwork that you could pick up from the 1700s, and it was something that I thought was really beautiful, and it is delicate, but it gets lost on a wall. So having it down here where someone can pick it up and look at the details, I thought was quite interesting. But I collect a little bit of everything. So, you know, I have paintings of a painting of a ship, some mushroom paintings, tramp art is a favorite of mine, an antique bird cage, and then my absolute favorite piece on this would have to be this bust, which actually my parents bought at a garage sale in the 70s. And my mom was like, I want to get rid of this. And so I carried it back from Texas in my hand luggage, and it just works perfectly in my house. And so just lots of fun things to really kind of look at and engage in the house. And I love really layering everything together to make people feel like they want to come closer and they want to engage with it. So we're in my den, and this was a place that I wanted to create a bit of a capsule. So I started with this really beautiful coastal blue paint on the walls, and I wanted that to be the setting for, again, a little bit of a nautical moment. So here I have my collection of my continued collection of ship paintings on this wall. Also, I really have a thing for convex and federal style mirrors with the eagles on top. So I have them nestled in here, as well as some salvaged pieces that kind of complement all of the ship paintings. One of the paintings that I do want to point out on this wall that I really enjoy is this one, which was from a local artist in Delaware. My first week here, it's quite a small painting, but this was one of the last paintings he painted before he said he retired. So what's cool about it is, as he was finishing it, he wrote my name on the ship. It's almost impossible to see because it's so small, but on the ship you'll see it says Mimo on the front of the bow. So to me, I kind of have it front and center because it's a special piece for me. I bought this sculpture. This was from an artist in Dallas. I bought this sculpture because to me it looked like coral. Later, when it arrived here, it's made out of cement, so it's quite heavy. It came with a little bit of a note that talked about what the inspiration was behind it, and it's actually a severed finger. Which I always thought was so strange. So I don't tell that story too often. That's why it has this little like red bulbous spot on it. But to me, it's like a big chunky piece of coral that kind of works in the house. Red is actually my least favorite color, and it pops into a lot of places here. So this I actually found when I was in Hawaii. It's an old Italian ashtray, and I just loved the color. I loved the detail, the geometric detail on the side. And then everything that's red in here kind of found me in one way or another. So it kind of is integrated against all of this blue and really plays on the nautical feel of the room. Again, you know, TV, some inventory. This is actually one of my paintings. So I have a pair, but coral kind of carries over into my work as well. So this is oil on wood, and I really just love the sculptural element of coral as well. Pretty much most of the subjects that I have in my paintings are going to have some sort of architectural or sculptural element to them. And then it kind of looks like it was old or found in an antique store, and that's something that really speaks to me as well. This fireplace is non-functioning. So this fireplace was removed in the 80s, and I actually use this as a backdrop. If you've shopped my page before, this painting looks quite familiar. I use this as a backdrop for photographing all of my product. And so it's always kind of fun to be able to play around with balancing things on the mantle while I'm, taking the photos. But the warm colors in this painting really kind of add to highlight the product. This is a painting I always get asked about. People are like, will you sell that painting? And I don't think I ever will, because it works so well here for me, and I got it at a really good deal. So this was a painting that came into an antique store. The day that I was walking through, they put this painting up, and then they gave it to me for $100. So I couldn't really complain. And it's just kind of an oil. I think it's from the 70s. And I feel like it, in a room that's so colorful and vibrant, it has a little bit of subdued qualities to it, which I feel are complementing to letting everything else speak for itself. One of the fun finds that I have is this vintage paper mache Where the Wild Things Are monster. I sold one, but I decided to keep this one because I thought he was quite interesting. He is missing an ear, but that's all part of the character. And I just set him on top of my lamp, and it gets a little illuminated, which I thought was really fun and kitschy. I have a pair of these really beautiful porcelain pineapple lamps that I thought were really unique. And I'm so thankful they're in such great condition, but they add so much character and height to the space. I despise overhead lighting. So every opportunity I have to kind of layer in some warm lighting, I try to do it because it's just more complimenting. Everybody looks better in kind of soft lighting. Funny enough, this corner, which I really enjoy, and it just kind of organically grew here, is a corner that I don't see often because when the doors opened, it's kind of tucked away. So it's a little place to explore in the house, which I think is really fun. I have this really wonderful Victorian, very deep frame that I fell in love with. It might be a little difficult to see, but it's rolled glass. And the detail in this was just amazing. And there was no portrait inside. There was no artwork. And so I found an old print of Vlad the Impaler, which is basically Dracula. And I had it blown up, and I had it put into this frame. And I felt like it was just kind of a fun, kitschy thing to talk about, because people are always, if they don't know that's Vlad the Impaler off the bat, they're always like, who is that? Like, why is he framed here? And to me, it's just a dark, moody character, right? So I enjoy that. And then I really love this cabinet. I was lucky to find one of these small antique lights that really cast a nice shadow. And here I have a collection of some science books, some art books with coral and other things kind of moved in. And, when people want to come and explore, I just tell them, move things around, grab the books that you want to read. And then there's this nice, seating area to the left that they can sit and read. There's a reading light. And my absolute favorite pillows in the house are this pair of 1967 needle points of beetles. And I was like, such an odd thing for someone to needlepoint into a pillow in the 60s. And they found their way to me through eBay, which has been kind of a favorite lately. And that's my den. It's just a place to hang out and have fun. And I think a little less serious than maybe the rest of the house. After spending 20 years in fashion, I was really getting the itch to do something creative. I felt like, I was a retail director. I was really focused on numbers. I was focused on things that were really like not part of my personality. For me, it was always about being creative, focusing on my art. I'm a painter, and I work in a few different medias as well. And I wanted to do something that I felt would allow me to fuse my creativity and my passion for art. And as I spent more and more time here in Delaware, I really felt inspired to decorate. I was decorating my house. I was finding things for friends. They saw that I was able to find things quite easily for my house. And I always tell them it always looks easy, but in reality, it's like you have to kind of go shopping all the time. And so at the start of the pandemic, I had a decision to make. Do I stay in New York City? Do I try to, balance like working, remotely in fashion, which was still clearly undefined? Or do I make the jump and I move to Delaware full time? And that's when I decided to do that. So I came to Delaware full time, and at the same moment, I decided to change my career. So it was a bit of a whirlwind. It was like pandemic, leaving the city that I love, and then coming to a quiet small town. But all of those things really played together to kind of shape what I did for myself in terms of the next chapter of my career. I wanted to be able to paint. I wanted to create things and put things out in the world that really spoke to me. At the same time, I wanted to help people make their spaces really beautiful. So in a world where so many people have kind of that gray household, I felt that I had kind of this duty to inspire people to be a little bit more creative with their spaces. And in that, I think people often look at decorating their space with only decorative items. For me, it's really getting all types of objects. So I will use natural objects, I will use objects that were never meant to be decor, and I mix it all together in a way that really allows me to speak to my creativity. So in that, I kind of started helping other people source items for their houses. And it kind of led me to interior decorating. All of these things together led me to open up my shop, The Cabinet of Curiosity, which started as an Instagram shop at the start of the pandemic. It was posting things that I found and that I liked on my grid. I started with, I think, 50 people following me. Slowly but surely, I was able to build a little bit of a following. And at that point, I started to sell some of my art. I would paint things. I love like entomology. So I would paint insects. I would paint teeth. I know that's kind of strange, but I love the architecture of a molar. So I would, paint all of the odd things that I would never be able to find in an antique shop. I started to create the pieces that I felt I would love to find in an antique store one day. And I thought maybe one day other people will find them in antique stores. So I started to pair my art into antique frames and sell that through my shop as well. Combined with all the antiques and vintage that I was finding, The Cabinet of Curiosity was born. Welcome to my dining room. What I love about this room is it's central to the house. You can access it from the living room and the kitchen. The French doors were really something that spoke to me as well. I have this wonderful dining table that wasn't originally a dining table. It's actually a lawyer's table. And I bought this from a Ralph Lauren sample sale. So this used to be in their store with like cashmere sweaters on it. And I had it shipped from New York City to Delaware. And it's just a great size to fit at least 6 people, if not more. The chairs are vintage Ethan Allen chairs that I found that somebody started to refinish. And what I loved about them is that they, had the different layers of paint still on them. And so I just kind of polished them up and kept them as is. One of my favorite things in this space is to kind of create a gallery. So while people are sitting and hanging out, there's like this intimate wheat chandelier that we can adjust the light on. And then they can enjoy the artwork on the walls. And I have 2 different discovery tables in here too, similar to the one in the front of the house, that have lots of collected things while being flanked with lots of fun artwork. If you're one of my friends coming through the kitchen, this is going to be the first discovery table that you see. So here I have a lot of wonderful tchotchkes and things that I've collected over time. Always lots of coasters, so people can use that for putting their drink down. But here I really kind of created a backdrop with art that I enjoyed. Obviously lots of nauticals and interesting pieces of art that are worked in with a little bit of nature inspired. And again, people are welcome to go through and play with, objects, pick up objects and really discover what's there and enjoy it. On this side of the dining room, I have another discovery table. This was really based on, a collection of spheres that I had. and then really expanding on like the dark wood tones and things that grew into the artwork as well. And this wonderful antique mirror that I found last year, it kind of replaced the more contemporary mirror. But what I really enjoyed about it was the ghosting, which is that kind of like faded look that the mirror has. It really just complements the moodiness of all of the collection in front of it. This back wall, I have a pond boat that I thought was really over the top and fun. And rather than put it in the middle of my dining table, you know, on a stand, then you'd kind of have a little bit of a blocked visual aspect to your guests. I had it suspended onto the wall and just built my gallery wall around that. I have this little cabinet in the corner of the dining room that I think was meant to house mostly liquor. I do have some liquor in it, but I instead decided to house some more of my collection. So lots of blue and white pieces, as well as some oddities that I felt were really kind of fun. And when people are in here having a drink or socializing, it's always great to invite them over to look through this curiosity closet. Now I'm gonna take you into my mudroom. It's in a kind of odd space being off the dining room, but I color drenched it so it's a little bit of a jewel box. And of course I hung this stained glass bat on the door, which I felt gave it a little bit of character. But it's nice and bright, and it's a fun place to do laundry. I know a lot of people don't love doing laundry, but for me, I quite enjoy it. So I have to create a space that's really fun for me to do that in. My favorite piece in this room is this 1940s seascape. I love the colors. I love the gold frame and how when the light comes through, it really illuminates the painting. And then I have a collection of, you know, just odds and ends, drawers for things that I can, you know, use while I'm doing my laundry. And by color drenching it, I had created this little bit of a hug that you get in such a small space, while keeping it interesting with all of the things that I've decorated. This is a portrait that reminds me of my grandmother. I found it right before she passed, and it arrived after she passed. And so because she's in the center of the house, I feel like she's always watching out for me. Just kind of another thing that I really love, you know, making my house a home by bringing an element of my family into it. So this is the entrance into the kitchen and the breakfast room that my friends come to visit. I know that I have a lot of traditional and classic paintings in the house, but I do collect some abstracts too. And because this is the breakfast room, I think it's always kind of fun to see these bright colors in the morning. Even the doors painted a fun green. I've kind of created a nook, really just kind of a fun and comfortable place to, when friends stay over, we can have breakfast here, or if it's a couple of friends, they can sit here and I can cook in the kitchen. You know, in my house, I have over 100 ship paintings. So every room pretty much has some ship paintings in it. And I started that collection. I continued that collection in this space. So in this corner, I used a barrister bookcase to show a little bit more of my ironstone collection. And then I just layered in a bunch of things that I've collected over time. The ship paintings, this really cool portrait that I found in Virginia when I was at the Luckett's flea market. And what's really interesting about him is he has a little bee for his button, but the leaf kind of pattern that I've put on top of him was actually an element that I added for the holidays. And then I never removed it because it just gave it so much like theatrics that I really quite enjoyed it. So, you know, here you have the contrast of some of the darker and moodier things, the taxidermy mixed in with the bright things like the door, the abstract paintings. There are some paintings here that have a bit more of a brighter color than some of the other ship paintings in my house have. This is a salvaged stone that I found that belonged to a tulip table. And so I just placed it on top of an old wooden table that I found. I have some Victorian chairs with nice bright silk plaid seats that I also thrifted. And then I have plants wherever I can. Ferns are my favorite. I love tropical plants as well. I try to bring that inside the house since they don't live outside too well. And then, you know, an antique new charcoal. You have to have one of those when you're having breakfast. This was one of the first rooms that I color drenched. So the breakfast room is color drenched in a color called Perfect Taupe by Behr. And then the bathroom is color drenched in Mountain Elk, which is also by Behr. They're on the same color wheel, but this is a much darker kind of mushroom color. I had fun with this, doing this bathroom kind of on a budget. So really kind of looking at what I could use that was already existing in the space. But it really all started off this mirror, which it was one of the, I think the first things that I found for the house. And I loved it because it's, missing some of the plaster molding on the top, but it's just so theatrical. And I felt like in a bathroom, it being kind of the center star, I really built outside of that. So using the darker color drenching of the room, it allows the gold in the mirror to really stand out. And then I integrated different, paintings and things that I felt were really fun. I had some stone cut for this little table with drawers. Actually, these are two different salvage drawers that I painted the same color, and I added brass hardware to so that they look like they're the same. But it's kind of a fun spot, when you're having a little party and people can go in. And I always love to go to those restaurants where you go in and the bathroom's really cool and fun. So it kind of gave me this like really awesome, nautical nightclub vibe for a bathroom, I guess, if you want to call it that. So we're at the top of my stair landing, and this sea captain was the first nautical piece I've ever bought. So I bought this in New York City about 20 years ago, and it was high up in an antique shop. I feel like all the best things are hidden, right? So it was high up in an antique shop. It had no frame on it. And I bought it, and then I found this frame on the side of the street in the city. And they don't fit, but to me they do. So I kind of like that contrast of the painting not actually fitting into the frame. And then this is my guest room. So this is where my guests stay, or as my mom says, this is her room. So we're in the guest room, AKA my mom's room. And this is actually the primary room of the house. But based on where my primary room sits, I chose that one for myself. And this is a bit of a larger room for my guests. And I felt like people could really enjoy themselves and be very comfortable here. This is something that I thrifted with my mom when she came to visit me in Delaware. And it's a painting of some botanical elements that I thought was really nice and calming. So I took inspiration from this piece to play off the colors in the rest of the room. Really kind of subdued tones, pops of green and reds and other things that felt very kind of natural to not only the space, but to complement this piece, which I felt was the center of the room. I have a collection of masks. I'm really particular about the masks that I want to collect. And I haven't really found exactly what that is, so I'm organically letting it grow. I'm placing them in odd places, but my goal is to have this whole kind of side filled up with masks and cover some of the old ceiling. So when my guests are here, I want them to have just as much of an interesting space as the rest of the house. I know sometimes people want a bit more of a calm space for their guests. I feel like you can definitely achieve calm with within a maximalist aesthetic. It's just pared down a little bit. So bringing in lots of fun color. This is a thrifted find of mine, as is such a great green. I brought up one of my convex eagle mirrors as well. Lots of books for reading, places to sit. But my absolute favorite are these oversized moths prints that I found. And, these are an example of something that I pick from my shop. And then I'm like, I think I might keep these. And then once I have them in the space, they're just kind of fun. And then I have the start of a little discovery table here where it has some collected things that have organically kind of complemented each other. And you'll see in other rooms that I have this draw towards like spherical things. So that's where this kind of collection came into fruition. So for much of my career in fashion, I worked for an English company and I learned the concept of a drawing room. And that's just an idea that I've always wanted to execute in the house. By doing so in this room, I color drenched the entire room in black, which I thought would be really easy, right? You just like paint everything black and then it'll kind of fade away. It was the most difficult room to paint. Black, like the walls are all clay or plaster and they just soak up paint. So this one room took 4 gallons of paint for me to finally get it to the hue that I want, to try to get it into the ceiling. But by color drenching it, I really created a nice kind of moody moment. And I was thinking Soho House a little bit when I was working on this room. So initially, I wanted to do some of my studio work in here, but it's just kind of a fun place to hang out. So it kind of shifted into more of a hangout space. But I did keep the practicality. This closet didn't have a door when I bought the house. So instead, I thrifted a dresser and I painted it black. So that way it looked like it was slightly a bit of a built-in. And then I put some of my more moodier collections in here. And this actually houses a lot of my art supplies. And then these really interesting monkey paintings I found in Palm Springs, and I carried them back in my luggage and I was like crossing my fingers that they wouldn't get damaged. And luckily I was okay. Cardboard is like really helpful for that. And then I have a collection of some different masks and spoons and things that I thought were all interesting wood elements as well. I wanted to keep everything in here as dark as I could. So when I looked at lighting, some of the lighting is vintage, like this library lamp, and some of it is more modern, but by choosing the same color, it kind of blends away, and it allows me to accent different parts of the room without making it become a focal point. There's 2-3 chairs in here. So it's really like a place to have a cocktail or hang out or read a book or have your morning coffee. And it's just kind of nice to be surrounded by this one dark color. I do want to point out this really cool nautical chandelier that I found and restored. I rewired it myself. And it was quite an interesting project to do, but I loved it because it kind of reminded me of Addams Family. I don't know, because it's not navy, it's actually black and white. And then I found these like moody bulbs to kind of go with it that I also put on a dimmer so that way I could, adjust what kind of mood I want to set in here. I got a little table to do some work on, so there's a spare chair that I can pull up if I want to look through books or bring my laptop in here and work. And then I absolutely love this 1940s painting. It wasn't finished, but just, her entire look is just so chic to me. And there was something about her that I really loved. And I felt that she was at home in here. And then lots of kind of fun elements as well, including some more teeth, which I put in these little boxes that I thought were really fun. These are hand-carved little wooden vintage teeth that I found. And then rather than just kind of lay them out, I put them in tiny little fun boxes. Again, for the seating, I have these wonderful knobby chairs. And I just, rather than getting custom cushions made, I just found big pillows that were comfy that you could sink into. And I created this little moment here with like a painting that I have. This is like a shop piece that I have in my shop that I really loved, and it was so dramatic and felt theatrical for the space. And rather than put a light directly over it, I thought I would cast the shadow kind of at an angle, and it really created a nice mood to it. And then I have another barrister bookcase that recently the top of it became too worn, and I was lucky enough to thrift a piece of marble that fit almost perfectly on top of it. So it's like finding all of these elements that are really interesting at different times. I think people sometimes when they decorate, they want to find everything at once, and it really is a process. So it's like what you find when you find it, how do you bring it together? That's how something kind of grows to how it is in its current state versus like, this room has looked, this is like 10 chapters of the same room in 2 years. So one thing that I absolutely love collecting, and I know I mentioned spheres before, are these really interesting wooden spheres. And I don't know, I cannot find any information about their history, but anytime I find one, I collect them. I think I'm up to 24. I have them in different rooms in the house, but the majority of them are in here. And they're all different sizes. And they remind me of like learning about the solar system in school. And I just, was instantly drawn to them and felt like they were so fun. I have my coffee table a little awkwardly placed in this room because of the shape. I didn't want it to be so formal of a seating area. So people can sit here and do their own thing or communicate with each other. And then I just put a lot of my like fun and collected things in here as well. I have some of my own artwork in this room. So I did, this is like air dry clay molars myself. I did a collection of 5, I think. And then I kept one for myself because I thought it was kind of fun and kitschy. And then I have one of my coral paintings. This one was on a frame. It's on a plaster frame, but it was a little too beat up to sell. So it kind of kept it in my own collection. So because this room was in this state for about a year and a half until I found the right element that I felt would really give it the character that I wanted it to have. So I had been on the search for a window. I wanted a window that was in good condition that I could put internally inside my house. And that's what brought me to this farmhouse window that I found. It's 5 by 5.5 feet and it's all rolled glass. It has all of the character that you'd want in kind of an old window. And when the contractor was like, you want to put this where? I think he thought I was a bit like, odd in thinking that this could work here. But when it was done, he was really excited about it. And it's just fun because it brings in light from the other side of the house that's in the hallway. It allows you to enjoy the ship gallery wall that comes up on the top of the stairs. And then it just creates this like almost like a window into this moment of the house that is so unique and so, I think, different from all the other spaces. And by going with a window that has like the rolled glass, I felt like it was staying true to the fact that this is an older home, even though this would be more of a modern approach to changing a little bit of the framing of the house. So we're in my hallway. This is upstairs that connects the guest room to the drawing room. And just wanted to show you what the farmhouse window looks like from the outside. So you get to peek into this almost little box of a room when you're walking through. And what I love about it is at night, with all of the glowing lights inside, it just feels really special. And again, it's across from my ship gallery wall, which continues from downstairs. So now I'm going to take you into my bedroom. This was a space that I wanted to carry on the nautical feel of the house, but really create a comfortable place for me to think about how I'm going to continue decorating the rest of the house. So follow me. So we're in my bedroom, and this is a piece that I worked on. It's the largest coral painting I've painted. I just kind of wanted it across from my bed so that way it was always very calming for me to look at. And it kind of set the tone for the nautical feel for the rest of the room. I found this really intricate bookcase that I absolutely loved. It has all of these like knobby elements to it that I thought were really fun. The books that are, not just for looks that I'm grabbing and I'm reading. It's a pain to dust, but it looks really, really cool. A little story about this cantaloupe painting. Last year I went to Massachusetts and I went to Edward Gorey's house. He's an artist that I was really inspired by. I loved his styling and to be able to go into his house and kind of see the aesthetic of his, the things he collected and the things he had around him. It was really inspiring to me. And he had a cantaloupe painting in his kitchen. And so then I was on the lookout for a cantaloupe painting. And I found this one, which I thought was really cool. And initially I thought they were bats that were on the corners, but I think they're moths. And it's just something that, like, the timing of finding it right after going to his house, I thought was really kind of a fun piece. And then I love layering my bed with lots of really great fabrics. My duvet cover is from Ballard Designs, and I love how thick and canvasy it was and the nautical stripe. And then I just layered some patterns on top of it. So for me, comfort and cozy is super important. And then of course, another ship painting. I flanked the sides of my bed with 2 different tables that were similar in size and shape. And then I played with similar colors on the lamps, but then I put the same types of lampshades and finials to tie everything together. And really it kind of expanded the space. Since I don't want or have a headboard, it allowed me to create a designated space for my bed to be anchored into the center of the room. So this is my reading nook. Here it's a little bit more comfortable. It's a down-filled chair that I found that's kind of a little over the top with the print, but I felt like it was just the right size and everything for the space. And I put it underneath I have a little gallery wall going here with some of my absolute favorite paintings. So there's this dark shadow of a horse on the top and this British naval commander. And then, this kind of reminds me of Jurassic Park a little bit, or that movie, The Island. Movies always inspire me in things that I find in the house, for the house or for my shop. So things like Beetlejuice, Addams Family, anything that has a sense of darkness or mystery to it, but then also movies that kind of stick out to you. Like for me, The Island. That's why I was really drawn to that painting. And of course, another nautical painting. So this little dresser is a nice little moment in my my room. I just recently acquired this really interesting lamp from a friend. It's called I think it's a wedding vase, but I couldn't find another one like it online. And someone had converted it into a lamp. And so I paired it with a pleated linen shade and a coral finial. And I love the vibrancy of the blue. There's lots of shades of blue in this room that play off of each other. And then a salvaged ship painting that's kind of falling apart, and I put it in a newer frame to kind of keep it together. And then this hornbill toucan, solid brass, that I absolutely love. And he's quite heavy and kind of a star of its own. So I didn't feel like I needed to layer too many things in this space. My favorite vase is this porcelain. It almost looks like coral. I don't know if it's like tree trunks or something, but when I collect, buds from the garden or whatever, I just think it's such a fun and unique piece. And then it adds to, my love of shades of blue. Home is really important to me. I grew up in a really wonderful home with loving parents who I'm very grateful for, and they created an environment that felt very safe and very inspiring. Both of my parents are creatives, my siblings are creatives, my nieces and nephews are creatives. So to be able to then create that in my own space, that was one of the best things that I could do when I purchased this home. It was really identifying how I could make it warm, welcoming, inviting. I know oftentimes people see all of these things and they're like, is it a museum? Does it feel like a museum when you walk in? And I'm really not that intense about it when people come over. I understand that things break, but I also want people to handle things and explore things. And I want it to be a sense of an element of interactiveness as well. So, home to me is just really where there's a foundation of love. So I have, love for my family. I have love for old things. I have love for art. I have love for just really things that speak to me. And so in the process of building my home, it was how I kind of curated everything that was swirling around in my head and brought it to life. And it was all the things that I really enjoyed, from traveling to art to nature. And comfort to me was really important. I really wanted a place where when my parents would come to visit or my siblings would come to visit, they knew that this then became a special place in their heart as well. Homeworthy, thank you so much for visiting me in Delaware, but it's time to go. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.